for the Tiverton Planning Board's March 7 regular monthly meeting. The first item on our agenda is to actually have a roll call of our members to establish a quorum. So I would like to call first on Rosemary Eva.
Present.
Amanda Sousa Vieira. Not present. Adam Raposa.
Present.
Peter Bramante.
Present.
Christine Shea could not be with us tonight. Janice Gomes.
Present.
Chris Shriver. Chris is not here yet, but he's expected. He's on his way. And Tricia Hilton cannot be with us due to travel. I'd also like to note the presence of Ashley Sweet, our Tiverton interim planner and administrative assistant, who is sitting to my right, and also Todd Romano, our legal counsel, Ed Rotella, our land use clerk, at the very end. Sitting next to him is Nathan Michael, our Tiverton consulting engineer. And we also have John Hoyle, our Tiverton building official and zoning officer, in the audience with us tonight, and I'll be calling upon him later. So the first item on our agenda tonight is Sakonnet Partners LLC. This is an application for a crematorium and chapel at 730 Main Road in the Neighborhood Business Zoning District of North Tiverton. The public hearing is continued tonight from our February 7, 2023 meeting, with the understanding that speakers will try to focus on those issues that are within the scope of Tiverton's regulatory jurisdiction and do not get into issues that only really the state can address. The time clock for this application expires March 15, 2023, in a week. And we'll be discussing a possible extension of the time clock later on. So I'd just like to have a word about how I plan to proceed. By the way, Chris Shriver, just to my left, has appeared. You're just a little late for a roll call, but he is present and accounted for. So I'd like to start by calling on the applicant's team to make a brief opening statement, if they wish to do so. And I see Jay Lynch ready to do that in a minute or two. And then I'd like to call on the citizens organization's leadership team to come up and make a brief opening statement at the podium, if they would like to do that. And then I will call on John Hoyle to explain his decision as Tiverton's zoning expert and zoning official, his decision on how he calculates parking based on the uses of the property of the proposed building. And then, of course, I'll entertain questions and comments on that. And then we can go into the people who have signed up on the sign-up sheet, and we will then, and I'll go through that list. And if you didn't get a chance to sign the sign-up sheet, don't worry. I will still take your questions. I will also be calling on Ashley Sweet, to make some remarks on conversations she has had recently that are pertinent to our hearing tonight. And then following the hearing, the planning board and the applicant will discuss an extension of the time clock to at least our April 4 regular monthly meeting. And the board will also need to decide on a possible continuation of this public hearing to our April 4 regular monthly meeting. So I just wanted to explain the process to you so that you know what I'm hoping to do this evening. And I now resume the public hearing from our February 7, 2023 meeting, and I call on Mr. Lynch to make brief opening remarks.
Mr. Chairman.
Go right ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Jay Lynch from the law firm of Moore, Vergadamo, and Lynch on behalf of the applicant. We're here, as you're aware, for development plan review, which involves the design of the proposed structure, which you have up on the screen there. It also deals with landscaping issues and stormwater runoff issues, all of those technical issues that are the criteria for the development plan review. What I was preparing to do this evening is to follow along. I know the planner had prepared a memorandum on March 2nd, 2023, addressing the criteria for the development plan review. And the planner has indicated in her memorandum those items that she would like the applicants to present evidence to the board that we meet the criteria. I am prepared to offer those witnesses now so we can get that information to the board. The public can look at it as well. And I think that would be the appropriate response. And we can finish our presentation. Any objectors can weigh in on the design issues that are before you this evening. So I'm prepared to do that right now. Or if you want to let someone else make an opening statement first before we get into the presentation of our case, that's up to the chair.
Go right ahead with the presentation of your case, but please, since we are limited to 10:30 tonight before the auditorium closes, please try to be as brief as possible.
We're going to be as brief as humanly possible. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two witnesses. The first witness is Joe Mallow, who is the professional engineer who's responsible for this site. And the second is Tim Gardner, who is the landscape architect that's going to address the landscaping component of the project. So my first witness, I'll call up Joe Mallow.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Joe Mallow with Narragansett Engineering, PE in Rhode Island. So as Jay said, we're just going to address some of the comments that was in the staff memo provided by Ashley on March 6th.
Yeah, if you want to just go right ahead and deal with the
Okay.
issues in the memorandum and your response to the board.
Okay, so I'm just going to go through the ones that just required comment within the memo. The first one, the first section is Article XX, Section 6A. Number 3 is written documentation from the fire marshal. So we've had conversations with the fire marshal. We've spoken with the fire marshal at the TRC meeting, as well as I spoke with him earlier this week on the telephone, and then received an email today. He has not had a formal letter, but we do have an email. So his main concern is just making sure we had proper access to the site, and none of the landscaping items that we're proposing are going to hinder that area. So we do have an operation and maintenance plan that will be submitted to the town. So we were just going to propose adding language in that operation maintenance plan that the trees shall stay in compliance with the Rhode Island Fire Code, that they will, it would be a 20-foot wide by 13-foot high clearance, so all of the emergency vehicles have access without being impeded by landscaping.
Before we move on from the fire department's comments, Lieutenant Murphy provided you an email this afternoon where he stated his sole concern was the height of the trees within that 20-foot right-of-way.
Correct.
And that can be responded to by trimming the trees to make sure that we have sufficient clearance for the fire department to get in through the main entrance, correct?
Correct. And Lieutenant Murphy is going to follow up with a formal letter that we will submit to the board.
And then move on to the next item on the memorandum.
So the next one is number 5. It's the buffering in the forms of walls, fencing, shrubs, and trees. So we provided an updated landscaping plan that includes a double row of evergreen buffer that are staggered along the east end of the pavement area. The trees will be, Tim can go into the type of the trees and the reason for the spacing in that we have, but in accordance with the code, they will be not less than 5 feet in height. This provides the required screening along the abutting residential property without the use of the fence on the east side. A fence will be installed in addition to landscaping along the north property line, which can be seen on the landscape renderings that just turned off on me. Bear with me 1 second. So in the landscape rendering, or landscape plan 3, the north elevation shows a wooden fence with some shrubberies and bushes and landscaping on the north side. So it would also help screen the fence to the property to the north. With these, the fencing and the double rows, this should meet all the requirements for the planting buffers.
And if you wanted to move on, I guess there was a question about Section 8 for the mechanical equipment. Can you address whether that's going to be located inside the structure?
So the mechanicals, they're going to be air conditioning condenser units, and it will be on the north side, adjacent to the door. There's a concrete pad, and it will be mounted along the building, or the little concrete pad, which which can be seen on sheets C101 and C101A.
They're not going to be roof-mounted units, are they?
No, they are not.
They're going to be ground level?
Yes, sir. Number 9 was just the exterior lighting. So there's going to be one building-mounted lighting that's dark sky compliant, and it's limited to the garage door area on the rear of the building. The specifications for that light was previously submitted, but there should be no spillover past the property boundary. And an updated lighting plan was submitted with the submission as well.
Do you have that on your computer? Pull the lighting plan up. Can you just explain to the board how, what you've done with that lighting plan?
So the lighting plan, it shows, obviously there are some pole lighting to the south parking area, but the change for this submission is just, if you look on the north side of the building, you can see the building mounted lighting broadcasting the light from the building face to the north, but then the lighting dies at that property line.
Mr. Mallow, this building was designed to be compliant with the design standards for this zoning district?
Correct.
And it also meets the zoning criteria for the form code?
Correct.
And you've gone through a long process in this. You've had initial preliminary meetings with the technical review committee concerning the design?
Yes.
And your design that's being presented this evening, does that incorporate all the comments and suggestions from the Technical Review Committee?
Yes, it does.
I don't have any further questions. Ms. Mello, if the board has any questions?
Do we want to touch upon the stormwater from Weston and Sampson memo?
So would anybody,
There was one other memorandum that I missed. I'll just have him address some of the Weston and Sampson comments that came in just this evening. You want to address those?
So today we received a second memo from Weston and Sampson.
so Weston and Sampson is the firm actually that Ashley Sweet works for, just to make it clear to the audience.
Or Nathan.
So you're responding to the interim Tiverton Town Planner's comments. Oh,
Nathan's memo.
Okay, so Nathan is our Tiverton consulting engineer.
Sorry. Thanks for the clarification. So, do you want to do it the same way we did before?
Yeah.
Okay. So the comments about the development plan review sheets were all pretty minor in nature, and they don't require any changes to the design or the actual layout. These comments will be incorporated in the final set that we will submit prior to the April meeting that was discussed that we're going to continue to. A couple of the noteworthy comments are the driveway apron on the survey plan. It called that the driveway apron would be removed and replaced. That was inaccurate, and that comment will be removed. The driveway aprons are in good condition, and they will just be reused. And then the other one was the septic system layout on the site civil plans is correct, and the layout on the landscape plan just needs to be matched to the new current or the new proposed septic layout. And then there were some stormwater management comments. One of them was the minimum standard was not addressed. In the previous comments going back. So in the stormwater report that was provided, all the 11 standards were addressed. So that was incorporated into the design from the beginning. And then we will provide a list of the LID standards and the analysis in a formal response to comments. But that is included in the design process. We determine the most practical low-impact design for stormwater that we can accommodate for every project that we do. The formal response, like I said, will be completed and submitted back shortly. The two other comments were just the rim elevations for catch basin 6 within the sand filter. That needs to be revised to match the calculation as Nathan found. And then the detail for the deep sump catch basin, that needs to be a 4-foot. So that detail on the detail sheet will be removed and revised to a 4-foot sump. And then just the last item is just the septic system design. So this project's gone through multiple iterations, and we currently have an approved septic system for the previous building layout. So with the modification to the building, we had to redesign the system as well. The revised design septic has been submitted to DEM, and we've received comments. It is normal practice to receive comments after submitting the application for review. The standard language on the permit review website states, application found unacceptable or unacceptable form mailed to applicant. All this means is that we've received comments and or questions from DEM staff. This does not mean or indicate that the application's been denied and or will not be approved. The comments are requesting additional information about the use of the facility and additional permits, the air quality permit that are going to be applied for. The only comment about the design itself is adding a secondary pump for resiliency purposes, which is something that we're more than glad to put into the design, and we're going to resubmit that as well. But no other comments provided by DEM indicate that we will not receive a permit for the current design that's been submitted.
I don't have any further questions.
Does anybody on the board have any questions for either Mr. Lynch or Mr. Malo? They may later, but thank you so much. I'd like to now call on...
Well, do you want to get the landscaping plan? Because I know the board had some questions about landscaping, and we've responded to the board's concerns, and we have a presentation to...
Yes, and that was done by Gardner and Garish. Is somebody here to speak
Yes.
to it? Okay, yes, let's do that then. And then we will go to the citizens group and the spokesman for the citizens group.
Hi, good evening. It's Timothy Garish from Gardner & Garish Landscape Architects in Providence. Excuse me, I'm coming off a cold, so I'm stuffed up. But I have a couple main points to make following in Joe's comments. The landscape around the parking lot meets the regulations as far as planting width around the perimeter, and also the number of trees. There's a street tree located on the south corner of the parking lot, southwest corner of the parking lot, and then along the vegetative buffer along the southeastern side, there's several species of trees, pine trees and some ilex alpaca. And excuse me. The double row vegetated buffer is a multiple species buffer. It's not just arborvitae. There's actually some deciduous trees in there as well, which will add some varying height to the buffer, which helps screen the building and the parking lot as the sections show that were shown earlier. Yeah, thank you, Joe. Excuse me. And adds varying texture and form to the vegetative buffer. Most of them are native, and the section shows them at planting height, which is 5 feet. And the vast majority of them are going to grow much larger than that, which can be addressed, but will also help with screening over time.
And the east elevation, that's the property that abuts the residential property to the rear?
Yeah, the light blue house? Yes.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Garish. Does anybody on the board, and that would include also Ashley and Nathan, have any questions for Mr. Garish concerning landscaping? And I think I
Yes.
see a question from Peter.
I'm having a difficult time understanding the west elevation. First of all, because that's along the sidewalk, is there a planting strip or planting bed? How wide is it? How will it be mulched? How will it be watered? And then what's the dimension of the sidewalk? And then is there a secondary stone wall behind that at the edge?
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to show when we're doing a section that has some depth to it with the landscape. So that gray hatch is actually where the stormwater area is, and it's actually turf. So there's the sidewalk, which, if I remember correctly, is 4 feet wide, Joe, which shows in the other elevation, right? And then there's a planting buffer of native vegetation. I know some of them are, excuse me, I've got to look. There is a mixture of Cornus sericea, the Arctic yellow dogwood, which it's deciduous, it loses its leaves, and has very striking yellow stems, which is along the sidewalk, and and New Jersey tea, which is another deciduous native plant which has a little flower to it. They're all going to stay in this range of height, just as a buffer to the sidewalk and to help break up the slope leading up to the building.
So what is the planting bed that they are planted in?
Oh, they'd be planted in mulch.
And how wide is that from the curb edge, the granite curb?
Right, absolutely. That meets the sidewalk, and I'm going to say that varies between 8 to 10 feet, looking at the scale.
And how will that be watered and maintained?
It would be maintained with the property maintenance company. I'm assuming whoever's going to come and mow and maintain, it would be a normal weeding procedure as part of that. We have not discussed having an irrigation system, but a simple drip system could be installed even connected to a soaker hose.
And is there a replacement or warranty program on all these planted materials?
Typically, it's a 1 year with the contractor. Absolutely.
Thank you, Peter. Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Garish? Yes, Adam. Adam, speak into the mic.
So there's a conflict with the architect, the landscape architecture between the picture that you just had on the screen and another one that we have in our booklet. They're totally different. So I just don't know which one is accurate, which one is the one you're going with, and which one got demoed.
So, Adam, at our last meeting, Neil Hingorani passed out a packet of information, including the more recent architectural renderings. So that's the one that we need to be focused on. So
I just got this today. I just got this packet today, so it's pretty recent, I think.
Yep. So I'm not sure, Adam, what you have, but what they're showing on the screen is my understanding of the most recent architectural renderings that incorporate comments that have been made for months now about the architectural look.
If you say so.
They do. I actually had to change them in the middle of creating the sections.
Yes, thank you. But when we do,
Nathan has pointed out that I think what happened was that the renderings that were used to depict your signs used an old landscape rendering that doesn't look like your new sections. So the old landscape rendering is the picture that was used to show your signs. That may be the issue.
thank you, Ashley.
That is the one he's referring to, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Seeing no further questions or comments, I would like to call now on representatives or spokespersons from the Citizens Organization. And I received an email from Mr. Ryan LePage asking me to call on Mr. Stephen Hendrick, Mr. James Maloney, and Mr. Giovanni Siccione.
I am all of those people.
Oh, excellent.
And you can just address your questions, just give me the initials of whomever you like.
Excellent, but tell us who you are.
I'm actually Linda Plazanja, Tiverton resident. I am speaking in place of Mr. Hendricks, and following me will be Mr. Maloney. However, I'm going to give you a quick brief the way that the lawyer did, and we will give you the choice of whether or not you want us to move forward with our presentation. I do understand that the two primary abutters, Mr. Fazina and Mr. St. Pierre, would like to speak before us. They have asked if they could speak before us.
It's
up to you.
I will exercise the chair's prerogative to recognize the two abutters right now.
Okay, so I just wanted to say about our presentation. We are a group of over 20 individual residents. We put the presentation together in respect of your time to avoid redundancy and lengthy repetitive statements, because we knew we were under a time constraint. It's built to respond to questions from the 2-7 meeting or any comments we saw as open, and you can of course let us know if you don't agree. We will provide fact-based, verifiable comments because Mr. Romano had said he wanted facts, and so we have created a bibliography and we have a lot of facts.
Okay.
And our hope is that we are going to stay within the purview of the planning board and or address any subjects that were raised at the last meeting and give our point of view on that.
Okay, that's excellent. But I do see that Mr. Robert Fazina
Right.
of 726 Main Road, which I believe is the light blue house right behind the facility, is number 1 on the list. So,
And you'll see me at number 4.
And I will see you at number 4.
It's a date, thank you.
First question I have is, I'd like to know if the fire department was informed that this
Yes,
building has been changed.
So this is Robert Fazina, as I mentioned just a second ago, of 726 Main Road, the nearest abutter.
Right.
Go ahead, Mr. Fazina.
I would like to know if the fire department has been notified of the change of structure, because of the fact that there's no fire suppression required on this building, which I really don't understand under a wood structure now instead of a metal structure. Second thing I have is there a generator going in this building?
So I believe I can answer your first question. All of the plans that have come into the planning office have been shared with the Tiverton Fire Marshal, Lieutenant Daniel Murphy. So he is aware of the most recent design, including the dimensions and the materials used in the building. So that is, I think, under control. With respect to a generator, I do not believe, I have not heard the applicant talk about any kind of a generator being used in this process.
So there would not be a backup generator in case of power failure?
I don't believe so, but then the applicant will answer that when I call upon them to respond to some of the comments that are made tonight.
Okay. I'd like to know, the plan, the renderings keep changing. Now, I haven't seen them renderings whatsoever.
Well, that's probably my fault.
Okay, but it's an issue, Stu. It's an issue. Because I like to ask them, if they're putting a retaining wall, what is the grade drop on that property when they cut up against my septic system? Is there a retaining wall? Your 8-foot trees are not going to cover a buffer for me, because my property sits 14 feet above that sidewalk. So when I stand there, I'm going to see people unloading bodies. I'm going to see people crying. I don't need my grandchildren in the front yard watching this. Why is the building turned to residential properties? Why isn't the address being faced toward the road?
We can... We can discuss how best to protect your privacy and make that a condition on any possible approval that we may make or may not make in the future.
So you're going to need an 8-foot fence up on top of my hill to block my property. 5-foot trees are not going to cover it. Here is a grade level.
We are willing to consider anything, sir, that you would like to suggest, because we understand, we all go by your house every day, and we understand
would stop
the
and
issue.
review it, because you got 100-foot elevation height above that property.
Right.
I have a driveway that looks like a river in a rainstorm. Okay. I don't understand what's going on here. I don't have grade levels. I don't have excavation levels. I've got nothing. There's no prints on it. There hasn't been any prints on it. I pulled them all up. I've got every PDF. Those renderings here he just showed, I have none of. Why? Why ain't they on the PDF? Why haven't they been filed? We got a lot of issues. We have a 4-foot grade level from the sidewalk to the elevation of his property right now. How far are we dropping it? Are we dropping it to the sidewalk? Because the last time I checked, the detention pond has to be below the sidewalk level. You got a 2% driveway. That driveway at 2%, that detention pond has to be below that. Water don't flow uphill. We've got big issues here. Okay, I want to know, in your rendering, did they take out the retaining walls around the garage? Because now that was blocking my view from his garage doors. They're gone. Okay, the other thing, the last time I checked with an insurance company, I've been driving a commercial motor vehicle for over 40 years. Okay, since when does an insurance company allow parking spaces in a loading zone? He said it was a loading area. Why do you have 3 parking spaces in a loading area? Come on, let's get some answers here. I'm not being mean, Stu. Okay? The other thing I want to know, and I need some answers tonight. And the next thing I want to know is, Mr. Lynch misunderstood me. I never said I wanted to take the easement away. I granted the easement. I bought my home. I signed that paperwork. But one thing you're not going to do, the town will not issue a building permit to reconstruct or redesign my land. He has the right to drive it. He doesn't have the right to modify it. And that my lawyer told me. When are we going to get some answers here? We keep coming here, we keep dancing with him, with new paperwork. Every time he comes in here, do we have permits? Do we have application for permits? Do we have a retort plan? Do we have a stack plan that we still haven't seen that man asked for in the last one? No, they put a stack on a building in a big box. I don't want to see the big box. I want to see the stack. Okay. Come on, let's be real here. Okay.
So with respect to the stack, I think that the design of the chimney or the stack will have a lot to do with the permit that Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management Air Quality Division will grant or will be asked to grant. So I don't believe that we can actually see, my understanding of it is that we will not know exactly what that stack looks like until the applicant gets his permit.
I don't agree. Does he have a retort company? Does he have the paperwork for the retort? Does the town have the paperwork for the retort? Absolutely not, because he hasn't submitted it. The stack will be in the retort. It'll be in the paperwork for the retort. Everything in that retort. The other question I have is, on the beginning, I asked you if the fire department was notified. Why I asked that was, they said in the last meeting that, I wish I had some water. In the last meeting, they said the garage was unfinished. You're going to put an 1,800-degree furnace in a garage with no fire-coated walls, with a chapel in that garage, with vehicles backing in that garage. Look, I'm aware of building codes. I did it for a long time. There's something wrong with this picture. We have no suppression, but yet we have no fire-coated walls. That machine is supposed to be so far off the wall, so is the stack. Where's your fire coating? You're going to put this thing in there with no fire coating and no suppression? I don't think so. Because it just isn't right. That building is going to go up like a matchbook when something goes wrong.
Well, one of the requirements that we will set on the application is that our Tiverton Fire Marshal, Lieutenant Daniel Murphy, will need to write a letter saying that he is entirely comfortable with the building and that it meets all applicable Tiverton and Rhode Island building code standards and NFPA standards. And he does that on a fairly regular basis with other applications. But I would like to respond. I would like to make a suggestion, sir, because I think you're almost unique in that you are right behind the proposed building, and you are exposed to it more than anybody else in the town of Tiverton would be. And
I am.
And, well,
I am, because I'm right behind. But you got
what I-
Claire that
what
lives
I-
right on the side of it. You have,
well, what I'd like to suggest then is that perhaps staff would be happy to sit down with you and your neighbors and look at different options for protecting your view and protecting your privacy. No, I know it won't. I know it won't.
Stu, the testing hasn't been done.
But
They haven't done, where is the ground level contamination? Where is that zone? Because that stack at 15 feet in the air, and that's what I want to see. I want to see this stack height. I want to see the size of this stack. Because at 30 feet from that building, my truck sits.
Right.
Okay? Right behind that truck is going to be even at ground level to that stack. So where is your ground level exposure?
So
Nobody's done testing. Nobody, and it requires that have an airflow study. Nobody has done a 60 or 90-day airflow study to see where the wind direction is and what it does. Okay? And I'm not bothering Mr. Lynch on chemical and emissions. I'm bothering you on the fact that that stack is part of that building.
Mm-hmm.
It requires a stack height and it requires an airflow study. Before anything else is done, they have not submitted the paperwork for that retort. If you're building a crematorium, everything needs to be in this office so you can review what they are building. And you haven't done that. They could say I'm taking their time.
yes,
Okay, I am.
I personally, sir, understand what you're saying, and I think it's entirely reasonable to ask the applicant to submit the air quality permit from the Department of Environmental Management as part of the final
This
package
application.
before the final approval, because then we'll get a much better understanding. And in fact, I had that. Well, you know, I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for my colleagues, but I can tell you this: I will make a case to my colleagues on the planning board that be a condition, that we actually see that, and we've done that in the past. This is
Only
nothing
because I
that we don't.
ask you, because of the fact is
Right.
they state
Right.
they're supposed to do a wind flow study, they're supposed to do a topographical land elevation.
Right, but they haven't done that yet.
They have done nothing. We have nothing. You said something to me and I gave it to you. I gave it to you, you gave it to town council, and I know you did because I read the letter. And here's the deal. You asked me for proof. I gave you all the proof the town needed at the last meeting. They read every piece of it.
I didn't ask you for proof.
Okay? I gave you proof. All we're asking is you give me proof.
No,
That's what I'm asking.
I think that's reasonable.
That's all. I think that's fair.
I think that's fair
Because the
too.
other problem you have, and we have, that septic. They went by old test pipes from 2018 study. All right, the pipes were put in 2018, just before I bought my property. What they haven't checked was, nobody's looked at, my septic system went in after those test pipes, which is 22 feet away. 32 by 16 septic system that's been leaching for 5 years. Where did that test study come from, and did they test the water? They need to do a new septic on a perk test. Because I'm going to guarantee you, if they do a test on that water, it's going to be gray water. It's not going to be groundwater. Because that septic system is 6 feet down. I had to dig it bigger. His ground elevation at my septic system is 6 feet. That's not groundwater. He's got to drop another 4 feet of elevation to level that land. He's going to be below water level. He can't touch my driveway. Driveway stays the way it is. He has the right to the easement, and I don't have a problem with him. Todd, we talked about that. This is not a civil issue. If there's a civil issue, he needs to take me to court, because I'm not denying the right to the easement. I am denying you the right to touch my easement because you will impede my right to my driveway. Because I can't back into that driveway if he drops the end of that driveway to sidewalk level.
So,
and that's what I'm talking about, Stu. Nobody did a site review, because if you did, you would have seen all this. We have big issues. We need tests. We need application for permits or permits. That's what the state calls for. Because what happened was, we're standing in front of you today because something was ignored. And what was ignored was the fact that zoning and the town council, when zoning got this application, there was no abutter notice or public notice for public hearing on this. It should have been done right from the beginning, not now.
I believe you're not correct on that, sir. I believe that there was proper notification.
There wasn't, Stu. If I wasn't at the December meeting, you were going to waive public notice and abutter notice. Tell me I'm wrong.
Specific notice is...
You said you were going to vote off the public and abutter notice until I stood up and I said to you, my ass you are, because that is in the code. Why are we blowing off all these notices? Do we need paper? I'll gladly contribute some. Or stamps, envelopes. Let me know. I drive truck full of it. I can get anything I want. I'll gladly help out the town if they can't afford the envelopes or the stamps. But I think we should follow the checklist. That's what I think we should do. And I think we should get the certificates. We should get the applications or permits. We need to do an airflow study up on that hill. We need to check and see what this groundwater was off this perk test. We need to see what the elevation grades are, because we still don't have a blueprint from anybody from this engineering company on grades and excavation. I'm not asking for a lot. I'm asking to follow the procedure. That's what I'm asking.
Well, without getting into the issue of whether we followed correct procedure or not, and I think we have followed correct
I'm not blaming
procedure,
you.
But I do think you have made a number of legitimate and valid comments about the impact of the proposed project on your property, and I think that does need to be looked into. So I will support that in any way I can. We are, the planning board itself is a quasi-judicial entity that has a lot of legal restrictions on how we can communicate with the public. So this may have to be really between you and our staff without my involvement or that of my planning board colleagues, because that would be an ex parte violation of law. But I think that some of the concerns that you have raised are entirely valid and need to be answered.
I don't understand why.
Maybe
it would
not
be
to your
against- I
satisfaction,
don't
but-
understand why there would be a law break in there because of the fact that it's what they're saying. It's what should be done. And that's got nothing to do with you. An air quality test has nothing to do with you. It's your suggestion.
Yeah.
A land height elevation,
Well,
a ground level exposure.
I'll leave that to the legal counsel to
That's
decide.
You're looking at me
If I can be more involved in this dialogue and discussion with you,
appreciate that.
I would be happy to do that. But I have to
But
leave it
somebody
to
has to
legal
make that
counsel.
recommendation, Stu.
Right. So, but, thank you very much, Mr. Fazina, and we will be talking to you later, I'm sure. So who would
I'm
like
sorry.
to be?
While I'm right here, I just wanted to tag on to that issue that you were just talking about, how you notified the town about this. Was it in the tiny box in Sakonnet Times?
Now-
Was it in a notification
Now,
that was
you
put up at
must
the
be
library?
Mr. Ryan LePage.
You remember me, Stu. Come on.
Please,
While we were talking,
you need to,
I'm sorry.
you need
It's
to,
just, I
you
just
need
had a
to say it
comment.
for the record.
Go ahead. Sorry, Ryan LePage, Horizon Drive, Tiverton, Rhode Island. I just wanted to bring up that topic that you were just talking to Bob about. You notified the town correctly on this. How did you notify the town about this? In the newspaper, right? In Sakonnet Times, in a tiny
This
box.
application for DPR review is both specific notice to the abutters within the 200-foot radius as required by state law and our ordinance, as well as public advertisement in the newspaper, also as required by state law and our ordinance.
Okay, that's required by state law. I understand. How many people do you think get the Sakonnet Times, the print version of it?
We
How many
followed the
people
statute.
found out about this through social media that's here? Tell us. Social media. We have a town fire department on social media. We have a town police department on social media that told us about the parking ban a couple of days ago. Why isn't any of this online to reach more people? We have to do the footwork to get notice on this issue. That's all I have to say.
So I'd just like to say, because I think that Mr. LePage did raise a very legitimate issue. There was a meeting yesterday hosted by our town administrator, Mr. Christopher Cotta, a meeting yesterday that involved all of the chairs of the Tiverton boards and commissions, and we discussed exactly the issue that Mr. LePage just raised, the fact that we're not getting through to the public because very few of the public are now getting news the way they used to 20, 30, 40 years ago. And we asked the town administrator about social media, and he reminded us that we have to be very, very careful. Any board like the Planning Board or the Zoning Board of Review that has quasi-judicial responsibilities has to be very careful about any kind of social media because it could get completely out of hand. So it's not quite like the police department and the fire department. But having said that, we are pursuing the matter so that we can do a better job of communicating with the public. And I mean the planning board needs to do a better job of communicating with the public. I acknowledge that. So I think that was a legitimate point. But I'm sorry I cut you off. So tell us your name again.
My name is Richard St. Pierre.
Richard St. Pierre.
I
You're
own
second on
34
the list.
Hambley Road.
34 Hambley Road.
34 Hambley Road. I own and have lived and paid property taxes at 143 Warren Avenue for 23 years. My mom and dad bought 34 Hambley Road in 1950. 7 decades of my family living there and paying property taxes to this town. 73 years to be exact. When my last brother passed away 4 years ago, our plan was to have my son and his family move here and take over that house when he got out of the Navy. He got out last month and is awaiting the outcome of this hearing. If it passes, they will not move back here to live next to this crematorium. My 6-year-old granddaughter and his soon-to-be born little sister won't be coming to live with us as planned and will stay in Virginia. Never will again in my lifetime will there be children playing in my backyard. Because of an out-of-state business who, to the best of my knowledge, has never paid taxes in this town and wants to build a crematorium in a densely populated residential neighborhood because he can't build it in his state. We are told that because of antiquated laws, this is legal business to put in our backyards. The problem with the building plans are numerous. I will touch on several that are major problems to me. Number one is the chimney. We can't see what the chimney looks like other than a box on top of this house. Where are the specs on the size and its height? With the building sitting at ground level, that chimney height is below the second floor bedroom of my next door neighbor, Mrs. King, who's sitting right over there, house, and my house. Now, the interesting fact is that the properties continue up Hamley Road. The elevations get higher for each house because they're on a hill. So basically, 5 or 6 houses up from Hamley, the chimney will be at their ground level. After that, they will be above the chimney. With the land right behind this crematory being basically level, then rising where the existing tree line starts, will act as natural barrier, slowing down the smoke from the chimney, and then the wind pushes it towards the houses. That's only common sense. So how high must the chimney be to alleviate this major issue? 50 feet? 75 feet? Who knows? The wind blows across Main Road from the bay and goes through all the yards. That hasn't changed in 60 years that I remember. Number 2 is the light pollution. Paquin's Insurance, Walgreens, the Medical Center, the Shooting Range, Duran's Auto, all have their lots lit up like it's daylight at nighttime. All the residents in the area get no darkness when it's supposed to be sleep time. Now this building will be lighting in the parking lot. They won't be able to shield those bright lights from our houses, which are just feet from their property line, unless they plant 30-foot mature trees to hide the light. These lights, no doubt, will be on all night long, making this area another Las Vegas Strip. We have already heard from unquestionably an expert in funerals and crematories regarding practices of certain religions. There are 10 parking spaces on the plan. According to him, there are religions that can have 100 to 200 cars attending a cremation. Where will they park? Hamley Road, Haskins Avenue, Walgreens Medical Center parking lot? Where are they going to park? Main Road is already congested all day long. Now this will make a whole parking lot of Main Road. Bob touched on a generator. They need a generator in case power goes out during the cremation. Not one in plans. Where will it be located? What is the noise rating of the unit? When will it exercise itself to run? And that's it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. St. Pierre. Would you mind passing your notes on to our land use clerk? I think it might help him assemble a thorough record of this.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. And so the third person on my list is Greg Costello, 21 Starlit Road.
Good evening.
Yes.
Greg Costello, Starlit Road.
Good evening.
I appreciate the opportunity to say a few words. I'll be brief because I know there's a lot to be said tonight. I've lived in Tiverton for 17 years, maybe 17 plus. Moved here for the same reasons you have, or for the people that are here tonight. beautiful seaside town, quiet, peaceful, great place to raise a family, and the belief the town will maintain the appeal and health of Tiverton. Now, Tiverton's comprehensive plan presents a vision for the future. The most fundamental goal, this is what it says, I know you know it, to preserve Tiverton's character, scenic beauty, and high quality of life. My fear is the town vision you advertise has been neglected. My questions are, and I think everybody here has the answers. Does the crematorium maintain and improve the community? No, it doesn't. Does the crematorium maintain the natural appeal of Tiverton? No, it doesn't. Is the crematorium an essential service to Tiverton residents? No, it is not. In fact, in 21, because we don't have the results for 22, there were 95 deaths in Tiverton. So what does that tell you? They're all coming from out of town. Or it's not a very good business plan. And lastly, is the crematorium what the Tiverton community is all about or wants? No, it is not. Last time I checked, north of 24 is part of Tiverton. An irreversible bad decision will greatly impact the entire town. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Costello. The number 4 person on my list is actually Al Cormier, and I see him sitting. But Linda had also wanted to come back in number 4 place. So, Al, would you like to give your place up to Linda?
No, I want Linda to speak.
Okay, Linda Plajan, and Linda lives at 11 Starlit Road. Here comes Linda. Mr. St. Pierre, did you have a?
Did you
Yes.
want to say something?
Pardon? Yes, you may. Yes, you may.
Thank you. I have a question regarding the stone wall behind Mrs. King's house and my house. Has the historical committee or the historical society been notified that this project is going on and they're going to be digging within 5 feet of that wall? And if they haven't, or if they have, who's responsible for repairing that wall when it falls down? Because what's going to be supporting that wall up there? They're going to be digging 5 feet out, 6 feet down, coming out. They got to put something in there, stop that wall falling down. That's an historical wall, 1800s. Can't move that wall. What's going to happen? I looked at that wall today. That is built on massive stones. You're not going to move them. Now what? That's going to affect his property, because that's going to affect his parking lot.
I think that that's an excellent point that you make, and I count 3 members of Tiverton's Historic Preservation Advisory Board in our audience tonight. So they're all listening to this.
I won't let that wall go. That's an historical thing, and I'll jump on that constantly. Thank you.
I agree. That's a condition. Thank you. Okay, now Linda.
I'm back. This is my handy helper, Jonathan Plazanja, also of 11 Starlit Road. Okay, so we echo a lot of what our neighbor, Mr. Costello, said. we used your words from the Comprehensive Community Plan to talk about quality of life. I won't read you the slides. You'll have a chance to do it on your own. The town uses this plan to guide their action. It's intended as a framework for accomplishing community aspirations. There are a couple of sections that refer directly to protecting the environment from potential sources of contamination and protecting the environment and the small town waterfront character of the community, and that the residents value a high air quality. We read that your role is to advise the town council, and as such, we think that you need to advise your colleagues that the zoning ordinance for business commercial districts as drafted does not promote public health, safety, and general welfare in allowing an incinerator by right abutting a residential area. These hours of comment could be completely avoided if the zoning department revisited a plan that was established in 1999. It needs to happen. It's almost 25 years. Everything has changed in 25 years. So the lack of requirement for air quality and safety inspections on the state and federal level and the complete absence of inspections at the local level do not promote safety from power failure or harmful emissions that may affect our air quality or water runoff that may contaminate groundwater and soil. Connecticut, for example, mandates 500 feet between an incinerator smokestack, which you've heard a lot about, and residential dwellings. Rhode Island has no such mandate. Mr. Fazina is 62 feet away. Our position is there is no safe distance from the smokestack emitted from an incinerator burning human waste. This is an aerial view of, there's probably no better way to capture just how close these residences are than to look at this aerial view of a drone photo. These folks aren't Mr. Fazina, but they're just as concerned about their air quality. So we've been in touch almost daily with the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management, and they have found a deficiency in the applicant's OWTS application. And they asked, we didn't put this into their, and this was not brought up by Mr. Mallow, what type of waste, chemical, hazardous, or medical is going into the system? Are there any additional chemicals used in the cremation process that will be discharged into the septic? Please comply with rule OWT, etc. It doesn't appear that the proposed pump has enough storage capacity for a single day's flow. Is an air permit required at this site? And the answer is yes. Our question is simple. Do we want chemicals of any type in our air or water or in our ground? And the answer is no, we don't. I'm not going to get into this because you specifically asked us not to. This is the proof from the last meeting of what kind of things are going to go into the air. The most important thing I will say is that the vapors of mercury are odorless and invisible, and they are perhaps the most dangerous to our community. It's a neurotoxin. It increases the risk of heart disease, lung cancer, asthma, birth defects, and diabetes. Children, pregnant women, babies, and our elderly at the most at risk. The best practices include siting away from populations in order to minimize these effects. Is this a chapel or a crematorium? We have a lot of concerns about the chapel. We've been told that a chapel is there for viewing or identification of bodies. Viewing and identification of bodies cannot happen at a crematorium by statute. So, this is a chapel. It's 680 square feet. The approximate maximum capacity is 68. We understand you're entertaining new figures, and we read about them, and we hope that when that's, confirmed, we can bring that up again. But the applicant is telling us that it will hold 4 to 6 people at a time. It doesn't make sense. It's an expansion space. It's a potential expansion space. Sir? Now, the generator. There are a lot of reasons to have a generator. A couple of them have been cited. Does the location require a regulated medical waste generator? What are the plans for upset cremations when a cremation is in effect and the power goes out? Is there refrigeration on site? How do they manage incineration stoppage for a mechanical failure? How do they manage a smokestack failure? How do they manage human error? This is what an upset cremation looks like. This. Black smoke until it is either brought on a generator or mechanically fixed, but you can't take a 2,000 degree oven and make it stop burning instantaneously. And that will burn itself out unless there is a plan in effect to keep it from burning itself out. So you've heard a lot about the stacks. Most of what Mr. Fazina said is accurate and a best practice. The manufacturers, we're hearing that the manufacturer is going to dictate how the smokestack looks and where it's situated and its height. The manufacturer's concerns are not our concerns. Our concerns are, again, the emissions, which I won't go into, but the fact that 7% of emissions are of mercury, which is deadly. And the applicant's submission document on 11/28/22 states that this project requires a minor source air quality permit to limit particulate matter. Who's watching out for the invisible emissions, the mercury vapors, the cytotoxic chemotherapy drugs that make their way through the smokestack when a formerly very ill person is cremated and that person has gotten chemotherapy? Researchers at the University of Texas found that proximity to sources of mercury release is associated with learning disabilities, autism, and special education rates in children. It can affect adults, and Rydam told us that they only have 4 inspectors statewide, and that they could tell us unequivocally that they will not be doing on-site air inspections because they have too few inspectors. So if the state's not going to do it, who's going to do it? The impact on property values and desirability of living within a 2,500-foot radius of the proposed incinerator, which includes 57 streets, 870 properties, and $415 million in property value, it says that it will drop 6.5%. This is cited from 3 sources. The negative impact on property values, and therefore taxes, is approximately $27 million. Tiverton residents are evaluating a class action lawsuit if this crematorium goes through, because our property values are going to tank almost 10%. The applicant tells us he is installing a retort. His own professional organization, the Cremation Association of North America, the EPA, Rydam, and the manufacturer all refer to the same unit as an incinerator. Tiverton outlaws incinerators in all zones, including industrial zones. Are we going to allow a question of semantics masquerading as antiquated zoning to encumber residents of North Tiverton with a business that is not safe for its own residents? At the 2/7/23 Planning Board meeting, Solicitor Romano asked residents, where is the proof? We need proof. The applicant tried to reassure us by citing the 1999, when I was young and could read without water, study by the EPA, which was performed on only one incinerator. One incinerator does not a comprehensive study make. He did not cite the more recent and rigorous 2017 EPA study. And it's no surprise, he's following the lead of his industry organizations. The Crematory Association of North America, on their website today, still cites the 1999 study, even though we have one that is almost 20 years of scientific discovery more recent. So now we go where I live as a social worker, to environmental injustice. Crematory operators usually find it easier to locate in low-income communities because residents have fewer resources to fight back. We're fighting back. Well-resourced communities get to kick out what they don't want, and so do we. I wanted to bring to your attention, because we do keep hearing that you're quasi-judicial and that the by right is sacrosanct, that Merriam-Webster defines by right as according to what is legally and morally correct. Morally correct. Given the outstanding questions you've heard tonight about the safety of this project and its consequence on all of us, we are asking you to do the right thing for the residents and deny this permit. Further, there is an ethical and legal quagmire awaiting all of us if you do approve this. How can you approve a crematorium from a mass funeral director who is prohibited by mass law, specifically by statute, from owning a crematorium? Mr. Ferreira has told us he owns Oliveira Family Funeral Homes. He also has told us, and we have seen evidence, that he is a signator on the LLC, Sakonnet Partners. He cannot be both in Massachusetts. He cannot be both. Massachusetts already has case law on this when a similar situation arose between Massachusetts and New Hampshire. No person registered with the Mass Board of Registration in embalming and funeral directing, or who has an ownership interest in or works for a licensed funeral home, may have an ownership interest in a business that deals with human remains, including cremation. This ban extends on their own website. He alludes to this when he says, in Massachusetts, it is illegal for a funeral home to own a crematory, which is why we work with a very reputable family-owned crematory in Rhode Island. And now he wants his own. He can't do it legally or ethically. And Mr. Romano also said in another decision that he wrote, that according to the planning board, the applicant must provide evidence of buffering or adverse effects by landscaping, which made us laugh because you're really worried about sightlines and so forth and not about these toxic emissions that could make our children sick. How does landscaping, beautiful trees, ilex and forsythia and freesia, keep our kids from getting learning disabilities, autism, and the special education rates in Tiverton going up, keep it from contaminating our air, water, and land, keep it from impacting adults with compromised immune systems? And how does this protect the town that you all serve from class action lawsuits on decreased property values and on potential cancer clusters? Here's how other communities have protected their residents. They've begun to deny permits for crematoriums near schools and homes because they privilege the health of their residents over new development that is inappropriate for the area. City tax revenues could decrease because property values of homes and businesses located near crematoriums will go down. Schools will need more money for special education due to the rise in learning disabilities. These are all cited in an article in the Weatherford Democrat from 2011, 12 years ago, and the studies have become more conclusive since then. Who are we? We're 1,100 people who have signed a petition opposing the location of this business or any other crematorium in Tiverton. We have a legal fund that's growing by the day. We have legal representation. We have expert witnesses, and we will take this as far as we need to keep our community safe. The next. I hate to interrupt you, but could you please keep that map up? Sure. The map you have on Oh, mine? the 1831 Tiverton map. That's it. I think I was born close to then. We have an expert witness who has advised and worked with other associations that were trying to bring hazardous businesses to residential neighborhoods, Mr. Jim Maloney, and he's just going to tell you a little bit about what you can expect should this go through. Thank you.
Can everyone hear me?
Excuse me, I'd just like to make a comment, and thank you, Linda, for a very forceful presentation. You raised a number of human health and safety and environmental issues, and I just want to remind everybody in the public and everybody who may be watching on YouTube that the town of Tiverton has no authority under state law to second-guess the regulatory agencies at the state level. The facility in question would be regulated by not only the Department of Environmental Management with respect to air quality and septic and stormwater runoff, but also by the state's Department of Health. They will be required to get a license to operate, and they will be inspected once a year, and that license will be renewable on a yearly basis. So a number of the questions that Ms. Plazania raised, and they're all very good questions, are addressed by state regulatory programs that the town of Tiverton cannot contradict or set higher standards with respect to those issues. So please keep that in mind. So now I would like to welcome Mr. Jim Maloney. Is that your name?
That's it. It's Mull and bang your knee. Ow knee. Mull, ow knee.
And you actually reside at 38 Pelham Street, Newport.
Yep, 38 Pelham Street, Newport, Rhode Island.
Yes.
I consider myself an abutter. And when you listen to what I talk about, this is not a Tiverton issue. This is a Rhode Island issue. And the chemicals I talk about, my expertise is in cytotoxic chemotherapy drugs. So I'm in a butter because the wind blows 12 miles down. It's me and my daughter. She goes to school in Portsmouth. And so this is affecting everyone. And I go deep into the science, and I have the top scientists in the world. And I understand this is going to be in the state. They all know me. Trust me on that one. This is very similar to the med recycler in East Greenwich, Warwick, West Warwick. And that was, quote unquote, a recycler. But what they were doing, they were taking human remains, and they said they were going to recycle it. But it was basically an incinerator. And this is an incinerator. And in 2009, I shut down every medical waste incinerator in the country. For the same reason we're going to shut this down before it gets started. Now just let me... Hold on! No! I'm not getting paid to do this. Okay?
I'm not either.
Yeah, I know. And I understand that, and I respect your time. One of the problems I have is once I get going on it, I tend to not stop. And I have some of the top scientists in the world. One of my partners who passed away of a massive heart attack last summer ran the Harvard School of Public Health. It's Dr. Peter Boyle. Then he ran the International Agency for Research on Cancer for the World Health. And then he had his own agency, which was the top in the world on what causes cancer. So the science that I have goes very, very deep, and it's terrifying. And when you have these types of chemicals, which have roots in chemical weapons, I can go into that story for hours. And you try to break them down using an incinerator, they become chemical weapons again. These are highly, not only carcinogenic, causes cancer. So everything causes cancer. Well, that's wrong. We know what causes cancer. There's a list. There's 105 known carcinogens. 10% of them are drugs that are used to cure cancer. I know it's contradictory. I mean, who would have thought that a drug is actually a chemical? And when you have a person that's being treated for cancer and they pass away, a tremendous amount of these chemicals are in their body. And when you attempt to burn them, you're releasing them into the air. And there's a tremendous amount of research that's new on this. And they're called non-threshold chemicals. So when you go back 500 years ago when the earth was flat, they say dose makes the poison. A certain amount, you're dead. Other than that, it's not poisonous. When you have a chemical like a cytotoxic chemotherapy drug, there is no dose requirement. And I use the analogy of that shampoo commercial from the 70s. So when you have a molecule of these cytotoxic chemotherapy drugs, and it alters a rapidly dividing cell, that's how cancer treatment works. We don't kill the cancer, we alter rapidly dividing cells. What else are rapidly dividing cells? Hair cells, why the patient's hair falls out. Skin cells, gut cells. When you alter one of the cells and it doesn't die, the shampoo commercial, you tell two friends, I tell two friends, permutation takes effect. So that's why it's non-dose dependent. So what you end up with is even a tiny amount of these chemicals can affect future generations. So there's a couple words I use. One is carcinogenic, we all know what that is. Mutagenic, which it mutates. And then teratogenic, which affects future generations. And roughly 15 years ago, when I was back in the environmental business, and I realized what was going on with these horrible chemicals that save lives. My daughter was 3, my mother was going through a cancer treatment. And I was absolutely horrified. I'm like, Mom, what are you on? And I use the analogy, you ever take a vitamin, a couple hours later you go to the bathroom and your urine looks like you ate your highlighter? Comes right through you. So we know how quickly these drugs come through and how they sweat them out. You know, it comes in the urine, your stool, and how quickly. If you ever go to CVS, you get that little piece of paper that's attached to your prescription. It's like that. It's about that big with tiny writing. That'll tell you how much passes through in your urine and how much in the stool and how quickly. And some of the drugs, they're there for a very, very long time. Some of them pass through very, very rapidly. And the reason every medical waste incinerator was shut down in 2009 is because there were chemical waste incinerators. The reason that the med recycler did not receive a permit in the state of Rhode Island, the air permit, is because it was a chemical waste incinerator. And the reason you should not approve this permit is because it is a chemical waste incinerator for some of the most dangerous chemicals ever invented. So as I said, I'm not being paid for this. I urge you to deny this permit, but if you approve it, you're going to have me, and I'm going to fight. So just beware of that.
Thank you, Dr. Maloney.
By the way, also, in 2012, I passed a regulation. It's extremely hazardous waste, Rhode Island R006. I also worked on the Bay Street area, which was perfectly legal to dump back then.
At that time, not now.
Maybe it's legal, doesn't mean it's moral.
Right.
So
I'm being asked, for the record, could you describe your credentials?
I have a degree in chemistry. I have a minor in physics. I've worked in the hazardous waste business for over 30 years. I used to own a hazardous waste trucking firm. Specialized in cytotoxic chemotherapy drugs. I've worked with the top scientists in the world, including Christian Daunton, who's chief of environmental chemistry. I've been published everywhere. One of my other partners, Dr. Teresa O'Keefe, she's an Oliver Bird Fellow. She worked with Watson and Crick that won the Nobel Prize for the DNA helix. No, she actually worked with them. She's a pain in my ass because she makes me footnote and reference everything. So if you want the documents, we got it.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And now I think we have other people who would like to speak. Thank you so much. And now I think it's a great time to call on John Hoyle, the Tiverton building official, because several people have now mentioned the issue of parking. And he can explain his ruling as the official Tiverton the zoning official for the town of Tiverton, why he has determined that 10 parking spots will be adequate.
Thank you, Mr.
Go right
Chairman.
ahead.
Thank you, sir. So I've been asked to provide an assessment of the proposed development as it relates solely to the zoning aspects at this time.
John, could you speak into the mic a little more?
I thought I was.
Yes.
Is that better?
Yes, and speak
Okay.
as loudly as you can.
Thank you.
That's
So
better.
I'll repeat, but I've been asked to provide an assessment of the proposed development as it relates solely to the zoning aspects at this time, which is based upon our review of the most recently submitted plans. The primary components relate to the use and occupancy of the facility, which directly correlates to the calculations for on-site parking requirements. I have prepared some documentation as well as a memo that I provided to the planning department that emulate what these calculations were based upon, if you'd like me to share that with you.
Just summarize it.
Well, in summary, what we've done is we've calculated what the occupant load for that building is based upon the subcategories of the uses. So, again, based upon the preliminary plans that I've seen, because the building inspection department has not yet received any formal plans relating to the construction methodology proposed for this structure, but we can assure that these calculations based on the occupant load are backed up by true facts, including provisions in the Rhode Island State Building Code for calculating the occupancy loads, as well as discussions with the applicant on what these areas are supposed to be used for. So I'll try and summarize this quickly. So the proposed structure is offered as a single-story facility categorized as a B business group pursuant to the Rhode Island Building Code, professional services, per section 304 of the cited code. The structure contains approximately 2,900 square feet of interior space, identified as 4 separate areas, an unfinished garage containing approximately 1,200 square feet, an arrangement room of approximately 240 square feet, an entryway with bathrooms of approximately 780 square feet, and a chapel with approximately 680 square feet. While the majority of the facility will encompass a garage portion of the structure, the remaining portions, which equal approximately 1,700 square feet, are recognized as typical business spaces with a maximum design occupant load not to exceed 17 persons, which is an occupant per 100 square feet of floor space. Pursuant to the applicant's remarks, the chapel area is not intended to be used to host funeral services, but only for, and in quotations, identification viewing, and or for immediate family members who wish to be present for the cremation process. The applicant has agreed to limit the number of service attendees to 15 and will refer clients to another facility should that number increase. So based upon those numbers, we are confident that between the building code and our ordinance for parking requirements, that the 10 spaces that are being proposed are sufficient for off-street parking for this proposed use.
Thank you. But while we have you here as a captive, I would like to now open it up to anybody who has questions, either board members or members of the general audience. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a
Peter
question.
has a question.
Earlier, so that you're saying that it is qualified for 10 spaces. Does that include the loading zone, or is the loading zone separate from the 10?
The calculations are based on the occupiable spaces, again, pursuant to the building code. So the unfinished garage is basically a parking space in itself if it houses a vehicle. So what we're looking at is anybody that will normally attend a service or a cremation process. And based upon that, including the office spaces and ancillary spaces, not just what is remarked on as the chapel, that it comes to 9.6 parking spaces. We round up to 10.
Okay, but again, just to clarify, so if there are 9.6 cars in the lot, are there 3 unoccupied spaces in the loading zone, or is the loading zone calculated with that?
Based upon the site plan that I've seen, there is no demarcation for any loading zone.
Okay, thank you.
That was actually going to be my question as well, and maybe we can ask either Mr. Ferrara or Mr. Lynch how that would work, because I don't remember. I think that when vehicles come in with caskets, they go directly into the garage. They don't go to a loading area. They go directly into the garage. So there is no loading zone area that I have ever seen on the plans.
The backside of the building is at my driveway. That loading area, he called the loading area. He said it right in the video if you watch the last meeting. I have it on the paperwork, it states loading area.
Who said that?
Ferrara said it, and so did Lynch. Okay, it's right on your video in your last meeting. They called it a loading area. You can shake your head all you want.
Right. So one of our members recalls that as happening as well. So I'll accept it. But maybe we can ask maybe we can ask Mr. Ferreira for a classification because he's more familiar than anybody else with this. The vehicle doesn't stop. It goes directly into the garage, as I understand it. Is that correct, Mr. Ferreira? So it wouldn't be interfering with any parking. And there wouldn't be a delineated or a designated parking space right in front of the garage area. So I don't think that's an issue. At least I can't understand an issue. Well, it's huge, and a lot of it appears to be. Yeah. That's Mr. Fazina. So we have a good question here. Is there a separate employee parking lot? That's part of the calculation, I believe, Mr. Hoyle, isn't it? I mean, you know how many people will be on site as employees of the crematorium.
Well, in accordance with the comments offered by the applicant, that is between 1 and 3 employees for very short time periods.
So if you have comments, okay, we're getting a little out of hand here. You will all have a chance to make comments or ask questions, but please one at a time. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any further questions for Mr. Hoyle while we have him? And I see Mr. Danner, you're on the list, and I haven't called on you yet, but I will. So, Mr. Danner, would you come forward, and maybe you can share the podium with Mr. Hoyle, because you have a question for Mr. Hoyle. And this is Richard Danner.
How are you, Rich? Richard Danner, 16 Miles Ave. My question is basically, it's zoned as GC, the area, the lot we're talking about.
No.
It's not any longer, sir.
Okay. Well, I was looking at the old stuff. It was zoned at GC, and it was, the maximum building size for GC is 50%. If you got a 5,000 square foot lot, and you got a 2960 square building, it's not going to work. It's over 50%.
It's actually
right?
in the.
That's
it's
black
actually,
and white.
Mr. Danner, it's actually not in general commercial. It's actually in neighborhood business district, zoning district.
Did that change as the permit was going in? Anyway, I stated my case. Good luck.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Danner. Could you respond to that, Mr. Hoyle? Am I incorrect?
In what respect, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Danner raised an issue about the zone in which the zone for number 730 Main Road, and stated that in the general commercial zone, if 730 Main Road is in fact in general commercial and not in neighborhood business, then the building is too large for the lot.
Well, to clarify on what the zoning designation is for that particular property, there have been recent zoning modifications made which have been adopted and are officially on the books. In this case, that commercial, the general commercial zone for that area is not the preceding zone. It is, help me here, Ashley? Neighborhood business.
So I will. So there's a big difference. There's a big difference, and yes, some of our town records apparently do not show the so-called form-based code zones that now exist in that neighborhood because our clerk base records haven't perhaps been updated But yes, as Mr. Hoyle says, the property in question is in the neighborhood business zone, and that has a different calculation. Greater density is permitted in that zone than in general commercial. But that was a good comment you made, because you would have been right had the application in fact been in general commercial. Did I get that right, Mr. Hoyle?
That's correct, sir.
Thank you. So now we have a question from, is it Mr. Fazina?
What do we believe? We can't believe anything that's here on their website. How you doing?
Very good, sir. John Hoyle, Rob.
So what you're telling us is we can't believe anything that's on a town website?
No.
So how do we judge this? Because I looked at the zoning, and if you look at their application part, it's in general commercial. It's not under neighborhood business. It's in general commercial under neighborhood business section, Appendix P. What is Appendix P?
The subject property is zoned neighborhood business. Their application reflects that it's zoned
Well, you better look at all the blueprints, because they say general commercial neighborhood business.
The official zoning map for the town shows that this is in the neighborhood business district. The GIS, the online GIS was not previously updated, but that is not the official zoning map of the town, and
Right.
that has since been updated and now does show that this is in the neighborhood business district.
It does now show.
Yes. But the official zoning map has always shown this since neighborhood business was adopted, and I
Well,
don't know
was
what
it
year
I
that
think it
was,
was-
but it's been several years.
It's been a good 10 years.
10
15.
years.
Yeah.
It has
10.
shown on the official zoning map of the town as
Right, 'cause
neighborhood
it changed in
business.
2014.
I don't know what year it was.
Yeah.
But with the chemicals in it.
Okay.
So does anybody else, well, we have Mr. Hoyle with us. I see somebody waving their hand in the, yes, and would you please come forward so we can, and I presume that you have a question or a comment for Mr. Hoyle. Okay, but they're not on the list. We're going to go through the list before we take people off the list.
Exactly, of
Yes.
course, I understand. What exactly defines residential commercial? A barber shop does. How on earth is a crematorium considered residential commercial?
It's not residential.
I mean, neighborhood commercial.
No,
Neighborhood, is it a neighborhood, like,
it's a
Residence?
neighborhood business
A
is
neighborhood
the
business.
term, neighborhood
Okay, but
business.
when I think of neighborhoods are neighborhoods, is that how they
That's the name, that's the official name of the zone.
I know, but how do we define a neighborhood? Is not a neighborhood like a collection of homes?
I didn't bring that document with me tonight, but it is defined right at the beginning of the document. There is a definition for, well, I think you're looking for a general definition. I can't find it offhand.
Well, you know what I'm asking.
But yes, it does talk about businesses, because it's a business zone, that are small and independent and not part of a chain. That is basically the concept, the philosophy behind the neighborhood business zone. It's not a legal definition that I've just given you, but that's my understanding of it. And Mr. Hoyle will correct me if I'm wrong. I don't hear a correction.
You are correct in your assessment, sir.
If you actually have the definition for neighborhood business, that would be nice.
I don't have it memorized, I apologize,
Yeah,
but
neither-
it should be in
neither
the
do I.
form-based code.
One way of defining the zone is by looking at the uses that are permitted within it. This use is a permitted use within the neighborhood business zone.
Incinerators?
What is under administrative review?
Yes, it does. Read Appendix B on your neighborhood business. Go up to your subchapters, read your appendix. It says, but under...
So I'm going to ask Ashley to look that up. Thank you, sir. And
Excuse me.
I am now going to excuse Mr. Hoyle. No, please, let's get back to the proper schedule. No. We have a sign-up sheet. We're going to go through the sign-up sheet. Then I will take people who raise their hands who are not on the sign-up sheet. Mr. Hoyle, as far as I'm concerned, you're free. You're off the hook. And now I would like to, we have 2 more people on the sign-up sheet before we get to people who are simply raising their hands. And those 2 people are Jamie French of 48 Craig Avenue and Paul Paul Durant of 750 Main Road. So Jamie French is coming forward, and then we will take Paul Durant. Sure, go ahead. Take your time. And then we will take people who raise their hand.
Hi, Jamie French at 48 Craig Avenue. Melody asked that I ask, how was the occupancy arrived for the chapel?
How was the occupancy arrived at for the chapel?
Right, that's why she wanted to ask. That's why she had raised her hand for the last.
Well, I think that's a question that only Mr. Hoyle can answer.
Why Melody had raised her hand to ask Mr.
Okay, so Mr. Hoyle, could you tell us how you calculate? I know that you asked the applicant what the chapel's use was, and then you took a look at the square footage of the chapel, and then you calculated the occupancy.
Hello.
Correct?
Hi, how are you? Pretty good.
So the Tiverton zoning ordinance as it pertains to parking is based upon net square leasable space. That's the terminology on which parking requirements are based upon. If we look at the facility as a whole, it contains 2,900 square feet approximately. If we divide that by 300 square feet, we have an occupant load of 9.6 persons for the entire site. Therefore, looking at it from the large view, that the entire facility only requires 9.6, again, we round up 10 parking spaces.
Right.
When it comes to the chapel itself, or the business use, as we remove it, although we're not required to by the zoning ordinance, when we look into the building code, which is a long ways from this point, from the building code standard, the area in that, which is separated from the garage, being the entranceway and the office space or the preparation room or the other, including the chapel, is considered B, business space by the state building code, which limits occupant load to 100 square feet per person. So however you mix and match the mathematical calculations to determine what the parking is, each way we look at it, it does meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are we done? Would you like me to stay around, or?
No, I think you can go back, and now I'm going to actually call. Jamie, do you have another question?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Asking Melody's question. Well, for you, my question for you is
Yes, Jamie, could you please come to the mic?
Come on up, Jamie.
Sorry. If it's limited to, this is one of my questions. If a chapel's not a chapel, but a viewing room, but the building is a chapel, and can have services for 15 people, how how do you tell Uncle Ted that he can't come when he's there? Or how do you tell Aunt Minnie when she's there and they're number 16 or number 17? And what happens when cousin pulled in and they're number 20? And what happens when you have all of a sudden 25 or 30 mourners in a room and it's like, oh no, you can only have 15. But where do they park? I mean, even where do 15 park if there's only spots for 10? And you have some people who might be there, who work there. Where are people going to park? I mean, there is no overflow parking, so they'll be out on Main Road. And then what happens when a school bus comes or an emergency vehicle? I mean, at one point, how do we restrict this parking to 15 people for a service? You know?
Because there's a stipulation for the issuance of a building permit and the issuance of a certificate use of occupancy issued by both myself and the fire marshal. We do, in fact, stipulate what the maximum occupant load can be of a building.
But are you going to be there when number 16 comes in, or number 17? And 15 people may have 15 cars, and there's only room for 10. What do we do with those 5 cars? I mean, how do we, people, where are we going to put all these cars?
That's a question for the ages. We can do as much as we can as far as certifying what a building can be used for, how many people can occupy that space, but we can't police it 24/7.
No, but if you're saying a service for 15, but you only have parking for 10.
We're talking about 15 persons.
15 persons will probably have 15 cars, and therefore, but we have parking for 10.
Well, I can only enforce what is written in the zoning ordinance.
I know.
And that's what my calculation's based upon.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I have other questions. The question has been, the use by right was mentioned quite often at the meeting last month, but was not discussed is the use by right of residential people using their property and their right to use it, to be able to sit outside and to enjoy fresh air, to stay outside and not have mourners coming and going, maybe. 60 feet away is very close to be exposed to this. We have 3 bus stops. We don't know if the retort furnace is going to make a lot of noise, but it probably will, because it burning that much natural gas creates noise. And people have said that live next to the crematorium on Rock Street that you can hear it when the incinerator's running. You can hear it burning all day. You can hear that. If you have a generator backup, there's going to be more noise. And would you want to live next to a building that creates that much noise? I mean, we have existing established residential neighborhoods right adjacent to this. And these neighborhoods have a use by right as well. This whole plan has been so muddied. It's like we have, if you look at the prints that we have, because they're not very clear, we have disappearing doors. They come on one outside door. It comes on one print on the east gable end, and it disappears on another. It's hard to tell. On the stormwater, it may or may not be there, but on the landscape, it is. We have, when the building was explained at the last meeting, it was explained that the north side was the back of the building, but the back of the building is the east side. Then when they showed the back of the building, which is the east side, they said it was the south side, and said that you can maybe see the sign of the building as you're coming up and down Main Street, but not well. But how could you do that? Because you'd have to look through the building, because the front door is in the back of the building. The front door is not on the side of the building or in the front of the building. And so it's kind of been like, it's almost like a riddle of when you're looking at the plans, what are you really looking at? You asked where the chimney was going to be, and they said it was going to be on the east slope. Well, the east slope puts the chimney above the front door.
Right. So,
But it's not above the front door.
So, Ms.
It would
French-
be on the south slope.
So Ms.
But-
French, there has been confusion, as noted earlier, concerning the actual design of the building.
Yeah.
And the actual location of the chimney. And the design has changed several times over the course of the application. But please rest assured that before we make a final decision, we will know exactly what we're getting from all possible facades of the building. We will know exactly what it's going to look like, and exactly where doors and windows are and where the chimney is. So yes,
But it shouldn't be that
and should
that
we
complex.
approve this, we would make that part of the final written decision. So it would be, we would have legal. It would be legally binding on the applicant. So we will be looking into that. But this is a moving target. This is a work in progress. But thank you for your comments.
I've looked at plans before.
We're now 2 hours into this, and we have one more
I'd like
person.
to ask about the hours of operation, though. He did say that they were going to be 9 to 5, so I assume there will be no burning bodies after 5, no delivery of caskets after 5, no services after 5, because the hours of operation were said on tape 9 to 5. Thank you.
As I recall, looking at the requirements for the Department of Health, they cannot operate after 5 o'clock. So there would not be any of those things going on.
Nothing, the whole place shuts down at 5.
My understanding is that the whole place shuts down at 5 o'clock.
And the furnace will be turned off.
And the lights.
And the furnace will be
So
turned off.
it's not going to be like
Okay, thank you.
the commercial stores across the street. Thank you, Ms. French. And now I'd like to call on Mr. Durant. Durand. Paul Durand.
Paul Durand, 750 Main Road, right next door. My parents bought the property in '91. I grew up at that shop every day after school. I'm gonna have a crematorium next door. I'm not able to take my daughter there. My employee can't take his son there after school. Who's gonna want that? I've got a concern too with the retaining wall that they might have to put in south of their property against mine. There's huge rocks there. They're gonna have to take them out. They already want to trim the tree that's there. You take the rocks out, that tree's gonna die. That's what's majority holding the hill in, which could turn into more rocks against the building, damaging my building. You're creating different water flow because most of the area is on ledge. You start moving things around, water goes here, water goes there. All of a sudden, my garage is flooded. The historical stone wall has already been gone over. I can't redesign my property, just like Rob, I'm not doing it to appease them. The parking, you can't park on Main Road. I've already gotten in trouble for it plenty of times. If they add a generator in, what's gonna fuel it? They're already cranking out that much natural gas that they have to tie in from across the street. What about all the neighbors that are tied into that? If they have the furnace going, their generator kicks on, is it gonna draw off the neighbors? They're gonna get a drop in their fuel supply for their heat. And if there are any changes go during construction, is it all gonna get approved just because of the fact of unseen circumstances? And the vegetation too, that's blocking all the views. There's plenty of deer around. They're probably gonna get eaten before they can even get to height. They're all gonna die. And the rest of my questions actually already got answered and addressed, so that's all I got.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we are now 2 hours into the public hearing. We have had a lot of really good information presented to us tonight. I still need to call upon Mr. Lynch or Mr. Ferreira or any member of the applicant's team to make some brief abutting remarks, but then I am going to ask my colleagues to continue this public hearing so that everybody in the audience who may have a question for tonight can ask that question at our April 4 regular monthly meeting. I hope my colleagues will agree with me to continue this public hearing. But I think we need to bring this particular agenda item to a close very soon because we have 2 other applications on our agenda tonight to get through, as well as some housekeeping business for the planning board. So, Lynch, you
Sure.
have the floor.
I'll try to, there was a lot presented to you. I'll try to respond to the highlights and answer those for the board. One of the questions that came up initially, is there going to be a backup generator on the site? Yes, there will be. There will be a backup generator on the site.
There will be a backup generator.
There will be a backup generator on the site. One of the questions that was asked as to why is the building designed the way it is, because it complies with the form code design requirements of your ordinance. So it was designed to meet the ordinance. Question on drainage came up. Even the town's engineer has reviewed it and indicated that the RIPTES permit is not required because of the size of the lot. However, the drainage requirements have been met for this particular site. The lights in the parking lot will be turned off after hours. Any lights adjacent to the building will be shielded, so they're not going to shine onto adjacent properties. Going back again to the cremation issues, the use of the property, that's going to be regulated by DEM. We are in the process of applying for a permit from DEM, and that we're going to need that before we can open up operation on the site anyway. So that's a requirement that we're going to have to satisfy DEM. One of the issues that was brought up about mass law and whether or not that precludes my client from operating the site. Number one, this board is not the entity that's going to determine what mass law is, but despite that, we are confident, and my client has checked with the appropriate agencies in Massachusetts that his use and ownership of this site is going to be permissible. Last one is the hours of operation. Just confirming again that the hours of operation are going to be between 9 and 5. I know you were going to have the planner address some of the comments that were received from DEM. I can just briefly hit on the regulation, the level of regulation that's involved on this site by DEM. They regulate the emissions. They regulate the operation of the site. There are strict regulations that are put in that have to be submitted to DEM, and DEM has the right at any time to inspect the premises. So with that being said, I know that the board, there are a few still state permits that are outstanding. We realize that the board needs those before you can proceed with final approval. We have submitted to DEM in response to their comments to the septic permit, and we probably will be submitting the air quality permit within the next day or two. We have no objection to continuing the time clock on this matter to your next meeting, to next month, and hopefully we will have all of our state permits in hand, which we can submit to the board at that point.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Lynch. And I would like to call on Ashley Sweet to make very brief, to very briefly summarize her discussions with Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management Air Quality Division. Ashley?
So
no, don't get into the science, just say.
I didn't get into the science. I had a conversation with a gentleman in the air quality office to confirm the process and what they look at He indicated to me that it is considered a true minor source. They don't come close to reaching the max allowances of emissions that are set by national ambient air quality standards. DEM will look at their application. He did indicate to me that they are likely to require a stack test or providing results from the same system that's operating elsewhere in the country within 180 days from the issuance of the permit. The stack test will determine if they're exceeding maximums, which are daily maximums. He indicated that if they are running at the proper temperatures, there should be minimal emissions, there should be no visible emissions, and that at the temperatures that these are designed to run at, virtually everything is destroyed. Major sources are considered 250 tons. This is a minor source at 1.5 to 2 tons. DEM is looking at doing inspections. He did admit that they don't have staff to do regular inspections, but they are working on that. They do not regulate things like the stack height. They do not look at impacts off-site. The only way that a stack height would come into play with DEM is if it was determined that they were tripping the maximums allowed. They would look at control devices or raising the stack height, but that typically the response from the applicant is to reduce the daily amount of burning that is happening. That reduces the daily load, and that brings them under the minimum requirements. And that's basically the information that he relayed to me in the conversation I had with him.
Excuse me, please don't ask questions from the audience. I've just asked Ashley to summarize briefly her conversations with RIDEM, and she will be available at our next hearing to answer any questions you may have. And we may also actually have a permit, or at least more information about the permit that the applicant must secure in order to operate the business. So thank you very much. But now we have a little bit of additional business that we have to do. We need to ask the applicant for a continuation of the time clock. We can't demand that. This is something that the applicant grants voluntarily. And I'm going to actually ask that the applicant grant us a 2-month continuation of the time clock, so that if we don't have everything in place for our April meeting, we will then be able to go to the May meeting without further ado. But if we only get a month, then we'll either have to do it in April, or you'll have to request another extension, or you'll put us in a position of having to make a final decision without all of the information. So,
Mr. Chairman?
So do my colleagues support me with the idea of asking for a 2-month extension of the time clock? No, not quite yet. We need to get the applicant to agree, and then we will make a motion to accept. So we have a member of the planning board who has asked to make a motion to deny the application. I'm not sure that is in order, and keep in mind now that that the motion would have to have a second in order to go forward, but so I will now ask our legal counsel if it is proper to recognize a motion at this point.
The motion has been made and seconded. I would suggest, however, that the applicant wants to submit additional information and is willing to do so. So I don't know if you want to make your decision at this time.
So my reason for this motion is the fact that the town does not allow incinerators. And this, no matter what you say, is an incinerator. You call it a crematorium. I'm going to interpret it the way I see fit, and I believe it's an incinerator in a residential neighborhood, and I think the permit should be denied.
So my legal opinion on that issue is Section 15 of prohibits incinerators, correct, but if you look at the first paragraph, unless the use is otherwise permitted.
Right.
A crematorium is specifically permitted.
Well, then, I mean, I've also been just reading, several, can I talk? All right, so I've been reading, a lot of planning association websites the whole time we've been sitting here, and, I mean, the consensus is that a neighborhood business district is to furnish convenience goods to surrounding residential district. This does not do that in any way, shape, or form.
Mr. Raposa, if you want to make a motion to deny
I do. I want to make that.
I will certainly work with you to do that. I don't know if tonight is the appropriate time because the applicant wants to submit more information. And if you want to, we can try to do it off the fly, but I'm going to counsel you against it.
Yeah, I'd like to do it right now.
Okay. So Adam has made a decision. We have a motion from Adam to deny. We have a second from Amanda. We can now have a discussion prior to the vote, and I would like to ask my colleagues not to support this motion because So I live within 1.5 miles of the proposed project. I go by it. I go by it every day. I live on Summerfield Lane. So so I would like to just say, and I'm going to call on my other colleagues to see if they have any comments. I think we need to give this more time. I think a lot of really good statements were made tonight that deserve to be answered. And I think we all need to digest all of this information that's just come in. We're going to learn a lot more about the permitting process. And then, at the end of the day, if Adam and Amanda still feel the same way, they can vote to deny at a certain point. But so I would now ask if there is any further discussion on the board before I call the question and actually have us vote. Is there any further comments? Everybody has to say. I think Rosemary has a comment.
I do, and I have been on this board many years, and unfortunately I was not at the last meeting, and I have received a lot of information, and I appreciate it, but I'm not comfortable in voting for this or against it at this time, because I received information early this morning. I don't have hard copies of some of the input, and I'd just like to be cautious. So that is I'm going to abstain on this motion.
Thank you, Rosemary. Does anybody else have any comments before I call the vote? Seeing or hearing no further yes, certainly.
So I think here, given the response from the general public in the town, if we pass or if we don't now, they're going to fight what are we doing here? They're gonna fight regardless. They don't want this here. We're just wasting time. It's just they're gonna fight no matter what. They don't want it. Why
Right.
keep dancing around the issue and wasting everybody's time? It's an incinerator at the end of the day. Regardless, it's pollution. It's not wanted by the town. They're gonna keep fighting it. They're gonna keep fighting it. We're just dancing around an issue that's gonna be inevitable, you know?
Thank you, Amanda. I understand where you're coming from. So now I would like to have a roll call vote, and I will start with Rosemary, and then we'll go that way.
Okay, I'm going to abstain.
So Rosemary abstains. Stu votes no on the motion.
I'm going to abstain also.
Chris abstains. We're getting into a situation where we may have a problem with abstentions. So Amanda, you're in favor. You're in favor, Amanda.
I had to think of what I was doing. I apologize.
Right,
It's been a long
that's
day.
getting late. And Adam is in favor, I assume. And Janice? You're going to say no to the motion.
To me, she's agreeing with Adam and I.
Okay. And Peter?
I'd like a clarification from our council. Is your hesitation that if we or not unanimously, but if the majority declines this permit tonight, that we will have less recourse versus listening to the, or getting the additional information that's come up and the questions that are unanswered? This is clearly an incomplete proposal at this point, and I'm in favor of denying it as well, but I want to be certain that it's our strongest and best.
What has been presented as the motion to deny and the rationale presented is not strong, in my opinion. Because the applicant wants to submit more information, because you've received a lot more information recently to digest, a much more defensible decision, either for or against, can be put together once you have the entire panoply of information given to you.
Folks, you need to be realistic. We want the best outcome. I feel, I'm saying personally, that the best outcome is to deny this. But if we are challenged, you're going to be back here, we're going to be back here, and we don't want to face those consequences. So I think what calmer minds... I'm going to abstain for this evening. Thank you.
So we have 3 votes in favor. We have 3 abstentions, and we have 1 no. So this motion carries. This motion, does it not? This motion carries.
Peter abstain, Janice yes, Adam, Amanda yes, Chris abstain, Stu no, Rosemary abstain. So that's 3 yes to 1 no. I can call the question again to have the people that abstained actually vote.
Yeah, I would ask the 3 people who abstained to please reconsider and perhaps decide yes or no, because right now we're kind of in a gray area. So I will call first on Rosemary. Rosemary, would you like to reconsider your vote? Rosemary is now no to the motion. So Rosemary is saying no to the motion, so now we have 2 no's. Chris Schreiber.
With the clarity that Peter challenged and put out on the table of what would the outcome be if we did it one way or the other, I would say no at this point, because I think we put ourselves maybe in a legal rabbit hole that we're going to get into with the applicant. But as I agreed. We're not for or against this at this point. We're just trying to gather all the information, because the planning board would be responsible if we were in litigation by an applicant as well. So let's get all the information together and make the final decision with more clarity so we all can answer the questions together. That's all I'm trying to get to. Is that fair? Well, it sounds like one of the most... I got it. Well, that was my rationale.
Excuse me. I haven't yet closed the public hearing. I understand that. But we've got a vote going, and we can't. We do not entertain a public hearing during a vote. So Chris Shriver is now a no, and Peter, did you vote? Did you vote in favor of the motion or opposed to the motion? Or you abstained, didn't you, Peter? So I would again, and I know it's putting you on the spot, but you've heard the arguments.
I have to vote no for now.
So Peter is voting no for now. So we still have 4 no's, and we have 3. We have 3 no's on the motion, not no's. Three people who are voting against the motion, and 4 people who are voting in.
No, backwards. Motion shut down. Motion shut down. Yeah. You lost 4-3. Okay. It's 4-3 against the motion.
It's 4-3 against the motion, and now I think under state rules we don't need 5. We just need a simple majority.
Majority
of
of
people
those present.
Present. So I guess the motion is denied. Your motion is denied. Okay. The motion is denied. So we will go on now to decide whether or not to accept the applicant's offer to extend the time clock. And I'm going to ask the applicant to please extend the time clock for 2 months, just to give us a little breathing space, to get all of the information in place. But again, that's up to you. It's not up to me. I'm just making a suggestion.
Mr. Chairman, I spoke to my client. We can agree to a 30-day continuance to your April calendar, 30 rather than 60.
So to April 15?
That's fine.
Okay, so...
all the documents are going to be in by then?
So if all of the documents aren't in by then again, keep in mind that...
That's okay. The meeting won't be that day. It's just the time clock extension.
No, we always extend the time clock beyond the next meeting. The next meeting is April 4. So the time clock goes beyond, so that gives us a little flexibility to have a special meeting if we need a special meeting. So now we need a motion. I'm going to make a motion to approve the time clock extension to April 15, 2023. Do I have a second? Second. Chris seconds that. Is there further discussion? Hearing no discussion. All of those in favor of extending the time clock? So Rosemary, Stu, okay, unanimous.
I'm not voting for it. I wanted it ended today.
Adam abstains. Everybody else voted in favor of extending the time clock. Now, do we need...
We have to change a date certain for the public hearing.
Yes. But we don't need a motion for that, do we?
Yes, we do.
We do. Okay, so I would like to make a motion to continue the public hearing to April 4, 2023. That's our regular monthly meeting. And we'll probably have it here at the high school. We'll let you know later on where the location is. So I'm making a motion to continue the public hearing.
Second that.
And Chris seconds that motion So we have, do we have any further discussion on that?
Just one clarification. The hearing will be April 4th. We will, as is our normal practice, right now say it is at the town hall. Most likely, we'll have to change it to here. Notice will be provided, though. But for providing notice as of this moment, the next meeting will be April 4 at the town hall.
And so,
I know.
and so we have a motion. We have a second. We've had our discussion. So now I need to call the question. All those in favor, and just a show of hands, it'll be fine. Okay. We're having a vote now on continuing the public hearing. So everybody supports that except Adam, who abstains. Okay, thank you. So, yes, Chris seconded that motion. So that's fine. That brings this agenda item to an end. And I hope to see you all back on April 4. And we'll arrange for better weather. Thank you for turning out tonight. This is a good example of local democracy at its best. And now we will go on to agenda item number 2. And agenda item number 2 is Alfred Sousa, 51 King Road. We don't have time for a break. We've got to get out of here at 10:30. If you're leaving, please leave quietly. We have a second agenda item. So Alfred Sousa, 51 King Road. This is a 2-lot subdivision in an R80 zone. The current parcel, which is designated as Plat 516, lot 107, is about 14 acres in size. I can see Mr. Sousa and his legal counsel, Court Chappelle. I'd just like to, for the benefit of the audience, to summarize that we had a concept plan review way back on October 25th of 2022. Ashley Sweet recommended a change to the proposed boundary lot line to make the 2 lots a little more conventional in shape. On January 4, the applicant went ahead to the Zoning Board of Review to seek the dimensional relief he needed for both lots, a very small amount of dimensional relief. That was granted, but that was actually a procedural error. The applicant really should have come back to the planning board with a preliminary plan application and then gotten our approval with a condition that zoning relief be granted, and we would have done a positive recommendation to zoning had that been the case. But that didn't happen, and it's nobody's fault. These procedural boo-boos sometimes happen. So now, on January 20, an application was submitted for a minor subdivision, and it was certified complete by Ashley Sweet on February 22nd. So now Ashley has a recommendation to make, and I would like to hear that. And then, Court, then I will call on you. But let's hear what Ashley is recommending, and then you can tell us if you agree or disagree.
So, as you said, Stu, the application did go to zoning, so this is out of order. And that's really your call as the planning board to determine whether or not you accept their zoning variance or not. I have a question on the zoning variance, though. In reading the decision, it's not entirely clear what the variance issued was. It says 9 and 32 feet, but it doesn't, I can't figure out where that, which lot goes with which measurement goes with which lot. I don't see the measurements that make it 9 and 32 feet, so if you could clarify that, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I made sure that staff sent the written zoning board of review decision to all members of the planning board about a week ago. And it's only 2 pages, but it is unclear what lot gets the 9-foot variance
Yes.
and what lot gets the 30.
And I couldn't figure it out from looking at the plans that we have, so I don't know if the zoning board got different plans that showed that more clearly.
So, Court?
Sure. So, first of all, it is someone's fault, it's mine. Procedurally,
You're forgiven, but please speak into the mic.
But that's how it happened, but that procedure generally is because in a subdivision, we want to come to you. If it's a minor subdivision, you want to make sure that we meet all the requirements of the zoning ordinance. Remember, the minors without a street aren't even always public hearings, but it gets referred to the zoning board, and then your opinion or advisory opinion goes. We had somewhat of an advisory opinion, although not from a preliminary. The ordinance says it would be from the first stage of approval, as opposed to a conceptual, which is not a stage of approval. So it wasn't that we were avoiding you, because we obviously came here first.
Could you get right to the point?
Sure. When we went there, the only variances that are required, there's Lot A and Lot B. Lot B is basically the rest, residue, and remainder of the land. And it has all the requirements of 80,000 square feet, all the requirements of frontage, all the requirements of setbacks. What it doesn't have is 200 foot of width at the front yard setback. Because it has 191 feet at the front yard setback, that is a 9-foot variance that was requested on Lot B.
So 9 for Lot B?
Yes. From 200 to...
Lot B is the 80,000 square foot lot.
No, I have Lot B on my plan as the 531,473 foot lot.
Because you just said 80,000 square feet, so I'm confused.
I have Lot B as the rest, residue, and remainder.
It's the big one.
The
Lot
big
B
one,
is the big
which
one.
is the 531.
Okay. So,
And if you look at that lot where it's hourglass, where it already exists with that kick out to the right, and where the front yard is at the front yard setback, there's a measurement in there by your engineer of 191 feet. Because 200 is required, that would be your 9-foot variance
okay,
on
so
that lot.
Lot B required the 9-foot variance.
Right. And if you look at Lot A, the 80,000 square feet, at where the house would be placed inside the setbacks, it varies slightly in width, as you can see, but the total width combined of the two lots was, I believe, 175 feet wide. Those two numbers. Or 171 when you combined at the frontage. When you went back, it was a little less than that because it tapers back a little. So at the board, they looked at where the house was going to be placed, anywhere in the building envelope. And in order to make sure there was enough of a variance, whether we put it up just above the A or just below the A, it was given a 32
Could somebody
foot.
show us where the 32 feet of relief has been granted? So the 32 feet relief relates to the house.
John, don't leave. I have a question.
Yes, okay. Okay. Does everybody understand that?
I'm very confused. The lot width is measured at the front setback. The front setback is 50 feet. Why are you measuring so far into the lot for the relief? Am I wrong, John, am I wrong? But the front yard setback is the designation in the zoning ordinance for the minimum, minimum distance from the front lot line.
So could Mr. Hoyle come up here, because he is the town's expert on zoning matters, and he was probably at that zoning board of review meeting, and maybe, Mr. Hoyle, can you explain it to us? Super. I'm glad you stuck around.
Minimum front yard setback.
Right. Yes. Yes.
So why are we talking about?
So why are we measuring in at the front of the house at 191 feet? We should be measuring at 50 feet, which is the front yard setback in this zoning district. So I think your zoning relief is invalid because it was calculated incorrectly.
Look, when you go in front of the zoning board and ask for the relief, and they tell you that's the relief, or
I'm not
grant the
blaming
relief,
you.
but there's certain portions of your ordinance, around a cul-de-sac, for instance, that say you need this much frontage, and then the building setback, you have to have width at the building setback. So
But if buildings...
you could have a lot that's thinner that goes back and move that building back.
But the building setback is not where the building is. It's, the setback is set in the zoning ordinance. It's a standard
And I appreciate your view on that. I am not the one that, I've been doing this for 30 years, and that's how this zoning board was looking at it. I appreciate that we don't have the same building official. I appreciate that we don't have the same person sitting in your chair. But that's what this zoning board has done in this case and in the past. We went there and asked for the relief. Counsel was there. Witnesses were there. There was...
Precedence and procedures issue.
No, that was a decision that was made at a public hearing to grant those variances to do
What I'm
this.
saying, Court, is that's why the precedence of approvals is important.
That discussion would have happened at the preliminary stage with the planning board, and we would have known what, right now, we would have known what those distances were. That issue would have come up. We would have all agreed, I think, that it's measured at 50 feet, not where the house goes.
In fairness to me, right, when we were here at Conceptual, we discussed the 191 and the 162 and exactly what the variances were going, the widths of the lots and exactly what was requested. This is the same plan that you saw. And at that meeting, I assure you, nobody said this would be the, we said, this one's going to be 191, it's going to require 9 feet. This one's going to be this. We might have all been wrong then, and I can appreciate it, but we were all here. Let's not have amnesia about the fact that we were all here at that Conceptual and talked about exactly what that relief would be, and then filed it exactly how we discussed and drew it exactly how we drew it when we drew it with you. So it's all right if everything's wrong now, but it's a little difficult to have everyone start over. As of today, Todd, that zoning decision stands. That zoning decision is issued. No one's appealed it, and it stands.
But it may not give you the relief you need.
Well,
either. So
that, I guess that's a count for another day. That zoning relief that's there makes this, in my opinion, even though it was cart before the horse, you look today, it meets all the zoning requirements, because if a variance is granted, it now meets the requirements.
No, because they didn't have the benefit of this board's decision in its opinion.
They actually did, because you know everybody appears at every one of those.
No, they
And
didn't
speaks
have
at every
the
one of
benefit
those.
of this board's
And members of
opinion.
the planning board were all there, but that's all true. And Ashley's letter they had.
As to the lot line configuration, but that's because you asked for that.
And as to the variances, all right. I don't know, if you're trying to undo it, you're trying to undo it. I don't know what to tell you.
I don't think anyone's trying to undo it or deny the application. We just need to make sure the correct relief is granted for your client.
Well, at least tonight, you can vote as a preliminary approval, subject to me going back to the zoning board for clarification on whether the relief is done. But at least the preliminary approval on 1 through 5 of the criteria, 1 through 4, because one of the criteria would be the zoning, but that's met. So you could conditionally grant it with the same advisory opinion, and I'll go back and say they are concerned with whether or not this should have been a variance of 50 feet as opposed to 9 feet, because it should be measured at not where the house is, but as close to the house as it could be. And if we need to go back on that technical, I would think that's a motion to clarify. I don't think it is going to require public notice, but I don't think it will require a new application.
So I'd like to move forward on this if possible. I think everybody has been acting in good faith. What I think everybody is perfectly comfortable with what the applicant is attempting to do. He's simply subdividing a very large lot, which now has a single house on it, and creating a new lot so that he can move a house that is built already but elsewhere in the neighborhood onto the new lot. If he can do that, why, is it possible, and I'll ask our legal counsel and also our planner, is it possible to go ahead tonight and acknowledge and accept what the Zoning Board of Review did back in January, on January 4? And if we do that and then go ahead and approve the subdivision, can Mr. Sousa go ahead and move that house onto the new lot in the location? You're saying no, he can't do that.
Well, the lot's not created by your preliminary approval. The lot is created by a final approval that
Yeah,
records the subdivision.
but that would be granted to you tonight. We would grant you the ability to go ahead and make that final decision tonight.
Well, you can grant it conditionally
Yes.
on the zoning board clarifying the relief.
Okay.
And final administratively.
And then, yes.
And then, once they clarify with zoning and they file a final plan, then they're all set.
Okay. So
And that's fair. I'm not trying to do anything crazy.
Is that a good outcome, Mr.
It's a good outcome for this board to make sure we don't, even when accidentally we do things wrong, we don't want to create precedent. So I get it.
Is it or isn't it? Yes or no?
It's fine.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was looking for.
As a clarification, I also think that
Now-
we should be adding the conditions, because there's new conditions in your recommendation about removing the trailers and putting the house in an envelope. Those are properly on a zoning board, so I'll be asking them to incorporate your conditions as well. I think Todd will agree that's usually where they are, not on the planning board subdivision plan.
Okay, I see. Now, can I ask legal counsel or Ashley or the two of you to put your heads together and come up with a motion?
Well, I've given you the facts of the application, I've given you the findings of fact, I've
Yes.
given you conditions of approval, which Mr. Chappelle has said he approves of, and that would transfer over to the zoning board to request that they incorporate those into their clarification or whatever they agree to do. So I think it's all there for you
Okay.
if you make that motion based on the memo provided.
Yes. Okay, so I will make that motion based on Ashley's memo to the board, which you should have received today, earlier today. Did I get that right, Ashley? Should I go on to talk about a clarification of the zoning?
We're going to be clear that it's conditional approval
So this is a conditional approval.
of preliminary plan.
Yes, and of course, it's a preliminary plan, but we're also authorizing Ashley in this motion to approve the final plan.
Right, so there's 4 conditions of
Yes.
approval that I gave you, that the trailers will, and other structures will be removed, and that the house is located in the setback. Mr. Chappelle has agreed that he's in favor of the zoning board enforcing that in their decision. Final approval is delegated to the administrative officer. The application is conditioned on the applicant receiving dimensional relief from Article V, Section 1 for lot width on both proposed lots, and that the final plan will reference the zoning board decision granting the dimensional relief.
Excellent, okay.
The only thing I want to add is that
so
it's
my-
either,
my-
just that it's either clarifying the decision or granting the relief. The removal of the trailers, I assume, is on Lot A, or the structures are on A. You certainly aren't asking to remove the house on B.
No.
So, it's just for clarity on that. So the structure's on A, and clarifying that. And Todd, I'll talk to you about whether I can do that on a clarification motion rather than starting over.
Okay, so I will make that motion.
Does that include final approval administrative?
Yes.
Second that.
So the motion was made by Mr. Hardy and seconded by Mr. Schreiber.
I just, can I have a little bit of clarification?
Certainly, because now we're having a discussion on it.
How are we getting around the fact that the frontage is just kind of like wherever they want it to be?
No.
No, there's a variance.
Actually, we'll
That's the
explain
variance.
that.
What are you doing? So the frontage runs up like, you know, 1,000 yards up inside the property from the street?
So they're gonna go back to the zoning board,
And just clarify that?
and that's gonna
Yeah,
get
okay.
clarified,
Okay.
that the lot width.
That there wasn't a mistake
That the
made
lot
there.
width is
Okay.
measured at the standard
All
front
right.
yard setback for the
Okay.
district that it's in, not
Okay.
the location of the house.
And Adam, what I see there is only that the lots don't change at all. It's that, does that need 9 foot of relief
see that.
or
Yeah,
a
just
larger
wanted that one
number of
bit of
relief?
So it may change the relief that they grant, but it doesn't change the lot configuration, the lot size, it doesn't change the frontage, it doesn't change anything, just the relief needed. Because it's being measured at 50 feet as opposed to whatever the distance
All right,
was.
So the relief that they're looking for B was how much? What were we looking for frontage relief?
They had 9.
There's no frontage relief, it's just lot width.
Oh.
Both lots need to be 200 feet
Right, and you
wide.
have, what do you have, 175 for B? So you're looking for?
I think it's
170,
171
so you're
for
like-
A and 175,
Is that what you applied for, 30 feet of frontage relief
No,
for B?
Adam, I think you're confusing.
I guess so.
no.
Frontage
There's
and-
frontage and then there's
Right.
width.
Yeah, right.
Two different things.
Okay.
Frontage,
Calculated
they have
differently.
enough of, because that's right on the road, and width is measured at
50 feet in.
Correct.
All right.
And that's the relief that they need, is the width.
So, but the frontage there is only 170 feet.
It's only 120 in the district.
Okay, all right.
So
okay.
the
All right.
lot
Yeah.
Okay,
frontage
when you
is
said 200,
120,
all right.
the lot width is 200. So
Okay.
you have to have 120 feet along the road.
All right.
But at 50 feet in, you have to have 200 feet.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
So we have a...
Pie-shaped lots.
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further discussion on the part of the planning board? Seeing none, hearing none, all of those in favor, and we'll just do this by hand. It's not controversial. Those in favor? Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, everybody, and Rosemary abstains. So congratulations, Mr. Sousa, and good luck with
now.
zoning clarification.
All right, thanks. That was a difficult night. I watched it for all
We'll
of you.
see you
so
back.
Nice job.
Okay, so that brings us to agenda item number 3, which is the very first application under our brand-new solar ordinance. And this agenda item is going to have to be very brief because we're running out of time, and we still have some more business to do, but you can give us a very brief conceptual idea. And what I would particularly like to know is, have you met the setbacks, and are you within the, I believe it's the 40,000 square foot limit on a solar ground array serving as an accessory to a business? So could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, so good evening, and thank you, Chairman Hardy, the Tiverton Planning Board, Interim Planner Suite, and all other professional staff in attendance for reviewing our concept plan as you just discussed. My name is Michael Shelter. I'm a project manager at EcoG Energy, representing our, what was that, sorry?
Welcome.
Oh, thank you, sorry. And I'm representing EcoG Energy Rhode Island 4, and I'm joined tonight by EcoG's Director of Operations, Julia Maglioso. So just to start, I wanted to say thank you again for having us here. We're very excited to present our proposed project to you under the new ordinance, as you just mentioned. Our colleague Kate Noda had provided us with additional context of the board meetings that went into building the ordinance, that a project similar or such as the one at Life Raft and Survival 590 Fish Road is something that seemed to be under the purview of what the planning board and the town was looking to help build under this new ordinance. So EcoG is excited to work with a small business like Life Raft, which has been providing a valuable service to the local Tiverton community for the past 3 decades, and we are grateful for them for working with us to partner for the next 20 plus years. We can move on to the next slide. I'm going to say next slide just so all of you know for flipping the pages. I apologize that this just got to you today. We had a couple of things going on the last couple of weeks, so that is why it was today. So 590 Fish Road is located near the intersection of Fish Road and Eagleville Road. The survey here shows the topography of the entire plot at 2-foot contours. Fish Road is the west side of the property, starts at about 250 feet elevation, and then the proposed array area, which we'll zoom in on in 1 second, in the south portion of the lot goes down to approximately 235 feet. Next slide, please. So zoomed in a little bit more, you'll see that is where we are, that's zoomed in on where the proposed site, proposed solar arrays will go. Those squiggly lines delineate between grassy areas and wooded areas. So you can actually see we are proposing to locate it in that entire grassy area, so it's already a cleared field and will not encroach on the wooded areas to the east or west. Next slide, please. So just going over natural resources real quick. We have already completed a natural resource study which indicated that a freshwater wetland exists, but EcoG's project will fall outside of the 50-foot perimeter that is required for the wetlands, and there are no sensitive trees that have been identified within that area. And additionally, the project will not include any grading and will not alter the natural elevation of the land while the accessory energy system is being installed. Next slide. This is just a quick overview snapshot of what the property lines are, so we can move on to the next slide. So this is a further out view. We'll again go into a more zoomed in view in 1 second, but this is our preliminary plan for the proposed solar array location. Following the submission of our concept plan, we had submitted our plan sets for a professional engineering review and received a stamp on them, so we actually will be filing that copy. I'll be sending that over to Ed later tonight or tomorrow morning, and also we will definitely be including those in our subsequent applications. So we plan to construct the solar PV system at the rear of the lot, which is indicated there, and on the slides, it's on the printout, it's actually a little easier to see. The brown box that's a rectangle is is a potential array change that is due to topographic and geographical concerns. So we have been working with the EcoG engineering team that there may be a potential to shift them, drop one of the arrays and make them longer, and we'll have that finalized by the time we submit our next application. So after understanding the Tiverton Stoll Ordinance a little bit more and everything on the EcoG side, we understand that since this property is located within an industrial zone, as well as the neighboring properties being industrial zones, even though some of them have residential properties on them, we fall exempt from that 200-foot setback regulation and actually just follow the zoning ordinance. Next slide. So zoomed in a little bit again, this is just focusing on the actual location. You can see that the utility connection would remain on the property and does not pose any modifications to existing utility lines, with a couple of requirements for new utility poles, which are the darker circles that you can see on the printout. And after we're finished, we're happy to zoom in on things further for you. Next slide, please. So this is just drone footage of the planned array location, just to give a little more visual context of what that area already looks like. Next slide. Yeah.
When was the property, this spot cleared out?
Yeah, I'll have.
I'm just wondering if it was in the past 5 years, 3 years, 10 years?
This is Julia Maglioso speaking for EcoG. That area has been cleared for as long as we have been involved with the property, which has been since 2019, so I can speak to approximately the past 4 years. I cannot say what the state of the property was before that, but since we have entered into a lease with the property owner, that area was already cleared when we began discussions with them.
I would be curious to find out when it actually got cleared.
Sure.
Great,
So I actually drove in a few days ago and got very close to the site. You can go right to the field, and you can, and it looked to me like it had been cleared. It's quite a flat lot. There's not a single tree or shrub, just some scraggly weeds and grass and so on, but it looks to me like it's been like that for several years anyhow. And it also looks like it was a site where boats were stored at one point, because you can see boat parts all over the place. In fact, there's still a Typhoon sailboat parked on the lot. So, it's not an old forest clear cut, if that's what you were concerned about, because that's exactly what I was thinking when I went there, and I said, no, this is a perfect place for solar panels.
According to the ortho imagery, it was at least partially cleared in 2006. It looks like in 2008 it's cleared even more. And then sometime between 2011 and 2014, it's cleared to the current state of where it is now.
See the amazing things you can do with maps?
Thank you.
Thank you for looking that up. So just to move on, and we're a little over halfway through our presentation, so not too much longer. Our engineering team drew up some sample examples of what our arrays will look like from a profile view. So the dimensions of each array will reach a maximum height of 7 foot 3 inches, and the spacing between each of the arrays is actually equal to the width of the array, which is favorable for stormwater management. So on this drawing, each array will be 14.1 inches wide, then there's a 14 foot 1 inch space between, and then the next array, and that will go for each row of the arrays. Next slide, please. And then they also did this drawing for us. As a note, the trees in this are not to scale as of right now, but this is to show what the sample layout could look like, and they were basing this off of a model of potentially turning that brown rectangle box that they had drawn up for us, and that gives some elevation facts for everybody. It gives a perimeter from the fence, and then it will give a perimeter, a distance from the edge of the solar array to the existing tree line. And the left-hand side of this is facing south, and the right-hand side is facing north. So we do plan to have that again in our finalized site plan when we do submit our next application. And that will also include any potential tree removal that will have to take place to allow for solar panels to maximize their efficiency. And again, we plan to have that for our next application submission. All right, next slide.
Question?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you guys plan on grading that spot more or less towards the west rather than the east?
As of right now, we're not planning any grading. Part of the reason for turning...
More or less graded towards the east now, which kind of goes towards the wetlands. Would there be any way for you to adjust that a little bit to kind of keep some of that?
We can, we'll definitely bring that back to our engineering and surveying team and have an answer for you by the next application for sure. Thank you for bringing that up. So yeah, we're good for the next slide. So here's just a quick little snapshot of some of the ecological benefits. It's roughly a 249 kilowatt DC, 200 kilowatt AC array system. It will produce about 322,000 kilowatt hours of electricity per year. For the US EPA carbon dioxide equivalent, our clean energy generation, or the project's clean energy generation will be about 252 tons of carbon per year. You can factor that in and think of it as 270 acres of carbon sequestered carbon sequestered by 270 acres of US forests in 1 year, or the amount of carbon sequestered by a little over 3,500 trees, seedlings grown for 10 years. And we do anticipate minimal removal of vegetation at 590 Fish Road to end up resulting in a net positive of the carbon sequestration calculations. Next slide. Just a few additional other benefits. So Life Raft and Survivors owner, OMB Realty, will be provided sorry, my brain, talking too fast. All right. OMB Realty will see financial benefits by way of lease payments that are going to be made by Ecogy for the accessory ground mount solar energy system. Additionally, this project will follow the feed-in tariff model, as they will receive a 20-year tariff through the Rhode Island Energy Growth Program. This will help provide Life Raft and Survival additional financial security and allow them to continue to provide their equipment, repairs, other services that they have been providing for the past few decades to the local community and also the community at large via any online presence they have. And we can see that there are going to be benefits to the Tiverton community. There will be clean electricity going back into the local grid without impacting open space, trees, greenfield areas. It will utilize an already developed industrial site and avoid impacting the natural features that are there, and also not impacting the public. It will increase the output of clean solar energy to Rhode Island, aiding in meeting the state's goal of 100% renewable energy by 2030. And there would be an expected additional tax revenue to Tiverton from Ecogy, which would be used to support local services. Next slide. And we did want to just touch on the abutters. As I mentioned, when we did a look, these abutters were on an industrial zoned lot. However, there are the residential buildings there. My slide got messed up, sorry about that. So we just wanted to point out where each of those abutters were, that there was a residential starting up at 590 Fish Road. And as you can see, there is a pretty solid tree line that follows behind each of those homes and fall out of the way of any possible removal that would need to happen. And if any tree removals needs to happen, it would happen, right against that tree line on Life Rafts and Survival's side of the property line. Next slide, please. These are just a couple of visuals that we pulled from Google Maps to show that you can't, from at least the street view, you can't really see down into the property of Life Raft and Survival, so we don't anticipate any potential aesthetic changes for the current residents that already are in place there. Next slide, please. So just a couple of next steps. On EcoG's behalf, we'll incorporate any feedback provided from the meeting tonight. We will finalize the location and layout of our solar PV system array structure as was detailed earlier in our plans, and we'll submit the application for the master plan, preliminary plan, and development plan review, and we hope to see you in April, if not at the May meeting. And just reminding the update that we did have that concept plan stamped, which will be sent over to Ed and is provided in the next application as well. And then next slide is just our contact information. We have an office here in Newport, just a 20-minute drive away, and we also do have one in Brooklyn, New York. So just a couple of different areas that you can find us at. So thank you, and again, thank you for letting us speak tonight with you, and we look forward to hearing your questions, comments, and moving forward with the process.
So thank you, Mr. Shelter. That was a very nice presentation. My personal feeling is that your project fits our new solar energy ordinance very, very nicely, and is actually a good development for the town of Tiverton. So and good for the business too. Helps a local business. So I look forward to your coming back. I can't guarantee it will be in April, but we'll certainly try to fit you in May. So
thank you.
We will look forward to you coming back. Now, does anybody else have any questions or comments for Mr. Shelter while he's still here?
I do, Mr. Shelter. What is your experience? How many other projects do you have going, or do you have any in the area?
So we are, I'll have Julia come up. I've slowly been taking over more projects, so Julia's a bit more equipped to answer.
Sure. So EcoG's portfolio is sort of all up and down the Northeast, as well as down into the Mid-Atlantic states and the Caribbean. We currently have 45 projects under our operational arm, and we have under development about 60-odd projects in various stages of development. We have done a number of projects in Rhode Island. Those have primarily been rooftop-mounted structures in Rhode Island. We have experience with ground mounts in other states, such as Pennsylvania and New York, but this would be our first ground-mounted system in Rhode Island.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Actually, we have questions from the audience. So I will take, I think I saw Ms. Anderson's hand first, and then I think we have a question from Jay Edwards, too. Yes, come on up and speak into the mic.
Susan Anderson, Main Road. I wanted to know what is the amount, do you know how many arrays there are here, and what acreage this will take?
Sure. So as we're showing in that site plan, the concept plan that we submitted shows 6 arrays that are slightly narrower and have a wider footprint north-south. In reality, it will end up being 5 arrays that are slightly wider east-west and slightly narrower north-south. That will be submitted with the subsequent application. So I do want to make that change clear that that is expected. And in terms of acreage, this does fit under the 40,000 square feet as outlined in the code. That is under an acre. I don't have the exact number, but it is less than 1 acre worth of space.
How many square feet in an acre? Oh, it's almost an acre. Okay. And so Jay Edwards had a question.
Jay Edwards, you all know me. Good project, good spot. Many things are good. However, your purpose statement, the project is permitted by right as it falls under the criteria for an accessory ground-mounted SES as described in the ordinance. Additionally, this proposed solar project will follow the feed-in tariff business model. In other words, its sole purpose is to sell electricity to the grid. The new ordinance is pretty clear on what an accessory use is. Ground-mounted SES, a system designed to generate no more than 125% of the energy that is necessary to support the commercial or residential use on the parcel where it's located. So this is not an accessory use. It becomes a primary use. It requires a special use permit. So, give that some consideration and think about it. But otherwise, it's really good, and it's what we designed this ordinance to do. Steer these things away from forested areas and put it where you guys want to put it. Just call it what it is and get it right.
Thank you, Jay. Well, you know, I'm going to suggest that that your organization contact the planner and also the legal counsel to clarify that, because because I'm not sure it's clear in the ordinance if that's the case or not, but I take Jay's point. And of course, if you did need a special use permit, then we would recommend an affirmative decision by the Zoning Board of Review. But I think you should, you know, take advantage of the time you have to talk to staff about that and get further clarification.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you. Is there any other questions or comments? Thank you so much for coming, and we look forward to seeing you come back.
Yeah, thank you very much. We
Probably
look forward
in
to
May.
being back soon. Have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you, Mr. Shelter. So now that brings us to agenda item 4A. I'd like to go to, okay. Agenda item 4A. I'm going to suggest that we pass over this agenda item because we're running out of time. I think that I would like to, the Boathouse Restaurant is not in any rush. They made it clear to us that they're not looking to do anything until the fall of this year. But I think that we should tonight appoint an ad hoc technical review committee for Highland Builders. That's the very small building right next to the shooting range. They have, they do need a TRC. So I would make a motion that we appoint a TRC ad hoc technical review committee for 4B. We're skipping over 4A. And that would include the building official, the fire marshal, the chief of police or his designee, the DPW director, and a member of the planning board. And of course, the interim AO is automatically the chair of the. So, do we have anybody on the planning board who would like to sit in or to actually be a formal member of that TRC? I don't see. Oh, Peter. You're it. Good. So Peter Bramante has volunteered. So Ashley, is there anybody else you'd like to have on that TRC? No. Okay. So I've made a motion. Do we have a second? Second. We have a second from Amanda. Do we have any discussion? Hearing and seeing no discussion. All of those in favor, show of hands. It's unanimous. Okay. So now I'd like to go on to approval of minutes. I think that's really important under the circumstances. Ed did a good job of putting minutes together, and I didn't do a very good job of proofing those minutes, I know, because I've heard. But I will make a motion to approve the minutes of April 7, 2022. This is the regular session minutes. And if somebody seconds it, then we can have a discussion, and then I know there's at least one person who has some further corrections to make.
You said April, it's February.
I'm sorry. February 7, 2022. No. But it should be 2023. So February 7, 2023. And we have a motion, a second. Now we can have discussion. Rosemary.
Nope, I wasn't here, I'm not commenting.
Oh, okay. Janice, you often have comments. Do you have any problems with the minutes? Oh, they're perfect? Okay.
What? You need to speak up, Janice.
Okay, so all of those in favor of approving the February 7, 2023 minutes without any further corrections, show of hands. Rosemary can't because she's abstaining.
Amanda can't, and neither can Adam.
And Adam can't, so that was 1, 2, 3, 4. But if the rest of us vote yes, because that's a majority of those present. So those minutes are approved, or officially approved. Okay, now we have the minutes for the executive session of the same date. And in those, we have to open our secret packages here, and then the minutes are nothing because the executive session was nothing. So I would make a motion to approve the minutes of the executive session. Do I have a second? Who was here? You were here. Okay. So Chris was here, and Chris seconds it. Is there any discussion about the confidential executive session minutes? Hearing no discussion, we'll do this by hand. All of those in favor? Okay, 4, and the rest can't vote. And so 4 carries the day, so those minutes are approved. Now, Ashley, did you have any strong objection to my passing over the boathouse at this point? Is there any pressing reason why we need to do this?
If they apply, we don't have a TRC for a whole month. So if they apply next week, I don't know. I just feel like it only takes about 3 minutes or less.
We asked them when they'd apply, and they said July.
It's on the agenda. It takes 3 minutes. I just suggest that you do it. But
Okay,
if you're not
in
favor, that's
I'll
fine.
come back if we have time. We have other things. I'm going to continue it. Okay. Planning office projects. Do we have anything going on there?
So I forgot the handouts. I'll send them tomorrow. I'll send them via email. There's not much right now. Ashley, I don't know if you want to speak on anything, but we have 2 administrative subdivisions, and then the applications that are in front of you.
Yes. So there are no applications other than administrative subdivisions that have come in that are not already on the sheets.
how do we look for our April meeting at this point in time? Where we can insist that if that things come in 21 days in advance of a meeting, we don't have to take it if it's later than that. And I think we should be pretty strict about April. So how does it look to you now, Ashley? I've been told that there is a huge project that, I've been told that by the, well, okay, maybe I shouldn't say, but I've been told that there's a huge project that's out there that could come in at any moment. Has it come in?
I don't have anything. I mean, I've had a meeting with an individual who owns property and talked about maybe submitting an application.
Yeah, I'm not talking about Hasenjager. I'm talking about something even bigger.
I don't have any.
Okay, that's
I don't have
fine.
an application for anything.
Okay, so how does it look then? How do things look?
So we have the continuation
Yes,
of 730 Main Road, and then other than
Yes,
that.
and we will also have,
Pecasset Reserve.
Pecasset
Right. So we have
reservation back.
We have a public hearing for Pecasset Reserve
Yeah.
for their amended application.
Yes.
I think that's it, right?
That's it right now.
That's it, right? That's it.
Okay. Adam, I think that's a great idea.
We can't, you already
But we already
continued
continued.
But they would
No.
have to re-advertise, because you already
Yeah,
continued it
because-
to a date certain.
Because we had that damn public hearing thing. No, nope. So I think we're stuck with it. Now, if it goes to yet another public hearing, then we could.
Pecasset Reserve is already,
Already on.
but I don't think that shouldn't be
That shouldn't be
a
very
major
time-consuming.
issue. You are already aware of what they're requesting. They're just.
What we might do is. Oh, no,
Doesn't have to be.
I'm thinking that what we might want to do is just take care of the fairly simple decision we have to make. And get that out of the way in a half an hour. And then go on. Exactly, and then we'll have plenty of time for the public hearing. And we're going to try to do it here, even though we continued it to Town Hall, but.
I couldn't say it was going to be here
Because we don't actually know yet.
Available.
Yeah. So, okay. Ashley is the guardian of the agenda, and you know that just those two items alone, plus the approval of minutes or whatever, that's going to be a full evening. So I would urge you to, if anybody comes in, even a day late, to just say no. And say, see you in May.
Saying no.
Okay, because we've had people in your position who have had a problem saying. So, okay, so,
But I think we have to stop getting information the day before the meeting and the day of the meeting, the emails. I mean, it's just getting overwhelming.
well,
You know.
I also would remind everybody that we still don't have minutes for at least one TRC, and that was the TRC done for Oxford Development Group, also known as Trilogy, also known as Sousa Road Condominiums. We well need that, because they're going to be coming back on the agenda sometime this spring. So I don't know who is responsible for doing those minutes, but if we're going to appoint TRCs, we need to be assured that we get those minutes in a timely fashion. And my definition of timely would be a week to 10 days. So just keep that in mind. Tonight was a good example of getting stuff on the last minute, and everybody was doing it to us, so I'm not blaming anybody in particular. We were getting last minute stuff from everything came in yesterday and today, it was like,
The zoning board is very emphatic about not accepting anything.
So I think, you know, we're still short-staffed, and we're still, you know, dealing with way too many applications, but going forward, I think we should be a lot more strict about when we accept stuff. And if it's not, you know.
There's also another TRC, notes. They're not minutes, they're notes. And I have found an old, very old one. I think it's about 5 years old, a format, I think, and I'll forward it to you. Over the past month, I found this information, and I'm all for having the attendees review those notes. And there is also another outstanding notes, and that's Brookdale. We didn't get the TRC Brookdale either.
Yeah, I noticed that, but Brookdale has come and gone, so it's like.
But it should be in the file.
It should probably be in the file, yes, you're probably correct about that. So having said that, I would entertain a motion to, I think we're, does anybody else have anything? I'm gonna just waive F, which was my own suggestion. And given the lateness.
I can respond to both of those in under 5 minutes.
Go ahead.
So General Assembly legislative updates, I don't know who's aware, but there is a package of bills that have been introduced by the Speaker as housing bills. They, if passed as written, which we've been assured that they won't necessarily pass as written, would greatly modify the planning process and require the community, all the communities in Rhode Island to rewrite significant sections of your zoning ordinance and probably your entire subdivision regulations. If you're interested, I can give you a list with a clickable link that will take you to the bill, and you can take a look at them. I don't know what will pass and what will not. I don't know what will get modified and what won't get modified, but there are significant changes proposed. And I'm happy to have a further,
have
like,
any of
more
those gone
detailed
to
discussion.
hearing yet, or are they?
So there was a hearing tonight for one of them. I believe it was the single-family zoning bill, basically prohibiting single-family zoning in communities of over 20,000 people or residents. I don't know the hearing dates for the others, but I can get you that information. But they are introduced, and they are going to move pretty fast.
Yeah, no, what you told us is very useful, you know, just for now. So we know that there's a freight train heading our way, and it's not going to be nice to Tiverton.
Given the communities for a time frame.
So the one specifically that I was talking about removes minor subdivisions, moves a lot of stuff over to DPR, eliminates or mandates unified development review, and would be enacted in January of 2024, but the reality is that it probably won't become law until June-ish, so basically 6 months, which is just crazy, but. So we'll see. I mean, it's all up for discussion at this point. The Planning Association has been asked to weigh in, so we will be providing, you know, constructive feedback. Hopefully we can modify some of the more concerning aspects of the bills, and we'll see what happens. But if you're interested, I can give you a list of the bill numbers, so that you can take a look yourself if you're interested. And I'm also happy to have a more detailed conversation with anyone who wants specific information.
Yeah.
Do you know, were they reviewing auxiliary dwelling and limiting, you know, basically Airbnb issues? Was that part of?
So there is a couple ADU bills out there to try to fix the really bad ADU bill from last year that made it just a complete mess. There is there are provisions in some of those to prohibit short-term rental of ADUs. We expect that will end up in the final bill, but there are kind of dueling ADU bills right now. We're not sure which one's gonna land. We actually, the Planning Association actually wrote an ADU bill, to try to fix the mess that was kind of made with the last, set of ADU bills. But then there's also another ADU bill that was worked on by United Way that's very different from what we're proposing. So again, it's all up in the air right now.
And the Airbnb issue, I think there's legislation specific to that as well.
There is.
I know Tiverton is specifically seeking some legislation on that.
Thank you.
So, Ashley, has your organization come up with a proposal for a complete overhaul of the zoning, the Tiverton zoning ordinance? Has that
Yes.
actually been presented to?
Yes.
It has?
Yes. It was given to Chris for him to review. My understanding is he's gonna pass it to legal for review as well.
Okay. So will we be able to see it?
I assume that it will, yeah. I don't know what
It will
process
eventually be a
he's.
public document.
Right.
Well,
I have no idea. I never thought.
yeah. Okay. So, okay, so, and does that involve just zoning, or does that involve both zoning and subdivision regulations?
It proposes both zoning and subdivision, but it is all, we're happy to tailor it to whatever the town wants to do. If the town wants to take those two things independently, that's fine. We're happy to do them at the
But
same
the
time.
subdivision regulations depend on
They do.
the zoning. Subdivision regulations implement zoning, so they have to go hand in glove. Okay, so.
Ready for a
that's fine.
privileged motion?
So I think we're.
I just know what we're doing with this.
He skipped it.
Skip it.
I skipped it.
When do you want it on the schedule again, or on the agenda again?
When we will try to do that, because it won't take much time, we'll try to do it probably in April.
A.
Yes.
Yeah, and on the next agenda, Ed, please keep 4E and 4F. Keep those on, so that we can continue to get updates. So, okay, we have a privileged motion, and
Okay.
so we don't even need to vote on it.
No, I'll make a motion at 10:07.
10:07. Thank you.